Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for Monday, September 20th, 2021. In the room is Sean Farrell, Rosemary Kennedy, and William Olson. On Zoom are Jamie Knutson and Darcy Dale, and I don't know if I need to do a roll call vote since we're sort of a blend.
I think you do. Might as well.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. So we'll start with Darcy Dale.
Darcy Dale here.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson here.
That's from the other room.
Sean
Farrell here.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy here.
William Olson here, and we'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will move down to our next item on the agenda, which is announcements and board openings. And we have a bunch of openings. I'll just go through each one of them just so we don't miss anything. But we have, in the Finance and Advisory Committee, we have 2 associate openings. On Conservation Commission, we have 2 openings. On the Hamilton Historic District Commission, who was at the Fall Festival yesterday, we have 1 opening. Open Space Committee has 2 openings. The Hamilton Planning Board associate member is available. That's 1 position. And the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust has 1 opening. Now we have a moment in the meeting where we will have public comment for anybody either in the room, which was not anybody today, or on Zoom for 3 minutes on topics that are not already on the agenda. So if you can raise your hand to Joe through Zoom, and then we can recognize you, and Joe can turn on your microphone. We have.
Robin's raising her hand.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda. Right.
Yeah. So Rob, if you're gonna speak to your to the community beautification issues, that's on the agenda tonight. You're gonna speak to something different than that? You're gonna speak to the Patton Park and Downtown District beautification?
What I've sent to you, Rosie has the flyers, Darcy's nodding her head. I sent 6 items, low-hanging fruit, and simple things that maybe we could do easily and soon. And I made a little slideshow, a 40-minute slideshow that shows a picture of each of these simple things. No, it's 42 seconds. So anyway, it's if you want me to quickly mention them, I'll just very, very quickly.
So Rob, but it's on the agenda tonight, so we're gonna get to it in the agenda, okay? So
Thank you.
If you'll be patient with us, we'll get to it quickly enough, but this is for items that aren't on the agenda, okay? Thank you, though, for coming and joining us today, and we look forward to having those discussions.
And
You have a,
later in the agenda, if I could, I'd like to briefly comment on the guest flag policy topic.
it's also on the agenda.
On the what, sorry?
And the flag policy.
On the flag, that's also on the agenda, too, so stay with us, and we'll get to that.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who has any comments? It's gonna be hard to hear.
Yeah. Gonna be tough. I'll just try to keep turning up the.
All right, so now we'll do the Selectmen and Town Manager reports. I know we've been busy over the past days and weeks between the Fall Festival was on this weekend, between getting ready for, get the warrant ready, organizing for the tent for our meeting that's coming up next month, and obviously some more articles and things we're trying to work through. So I know it's been a busy week, but let's hear from Sean first. We got anything to update?
I don't have
time
too
where
many
like all the
updates,
best holidays are, it's like 0 time.
to talk about the fall Hamilton local shop local fall festival was great. Really good turnout. I think it was. I mean, the first one was good, but this one was just. It was just so much better, and we had so many more vendors and people there. Traffic was handled well by the details. The trolley was great. Everything was wonderful with it. And kind of other department news, the rec department, we've just closed our pool after a really good season. And they're going to be putting out their winter programming stuff if they haven't already got their brochures out. So look forward to signing up for some winter activities with the rec department. And I think, have they installed the new scoreboard yet, Joe, at the rec center?
I don't think they have yet.
No, it's kind of fitting that we had just approved the donation of the scoreboard, and I think that night or a couple nights later, Jamie was telling me that the scoreboard actually died during one of their basketball games, so yeah, it was just perfect timing. So I'm sure they're looking forward to getting that installed. That's really all I have.
Rosemary?
Sure, I have a couple of things. First, the Conservation Commission met, I believe it was on the 9th. I apologize if I don't have the date correct, but wanted to just mention that there were a lot of people interested in the 133 Essex Street proposed development. There was a lot of interest and a lot of comments about that, so I'm really glad to see that people on all sides of the discussion are feeling very empowered to voice their opinions, their concerns, and their interest in the project. And I think that's kudos to our, especially to our very organized Conservation Commission administrator and also the Conservation Commission chair. So thank you. I enjoy going to those meetings. The next thing is just briefly to just wrap up from the Senior Citizen Garden Party that was held at the Patton Homestead on 9/11. It was a great turnout. The seniors were so happy. It made me happy to see them so happy. They felt it was a very old school garden party with parasols and so forth. And I'd like to thank a few entities. Crosby's Marketplace sponsored some of the food items. Honeycomb sponsored an amazing array of desserts. And Institution for Savings made a very generous contribution so that the town didn't have to expend any funds for this, which I was very glad about. I'd like to thank the shower singers from Marblehead, who the seniors all really enjoyed. Especially thank you to all the volunteers who served everybody. And finally, to the DPW, the Hamilton Fire Department, and the Hamilton Police Department, specifically Scott Janes, who set up and organized the PA system. Finally, one other thing about the Fall Festival. It was a really fun day yesterday as a member of the Master Plan Steering Committee. I was a member sitting at the booth, data gathering. There was lots of interest, lots of ideas put on our idea board, and we gathered lots of signatures. So it was an attempt, a very successful attempt to put the word out to the community and encourage people to become involved. It was a wonderful opportunity. And then finally, I was one of the 3 judges in the puppy parade, along with my colleague Darcy Dale and Chief Russ Stevens. I wanted to say that I was very impressed with all of the well-behaved dogs, and they were all winners in that respect. So thanks very much. Looking forward to it next year.
Darcy Dale, any updates from you?
Yeah, just pretty much an echo. The tea party was great. I can't say enough about it. I hope they do it next year. I hope Rosie does it again next year. Yeah, the puppy parade was really funny. I didn't know it, but all proceeds are going to Sweet Paws Rescue. So I thought that was, a pretty nice thing. A friendly reminder, this Saturday at 10:30, there will be a select board retreat and workshop in unconscious bias. I figure we'll probably be, it'll start at 10:30, so don't come any earlier than that. And I think we'll probably, we'll have our lunch and then be out by 1:30, so you can probably plan on that. And I just wanted to echo what Professor Jack Davis and Robin Davis were talking about, just community coming together and pitching in together and creating something really great. And I just really love that idea. And I'm especially, I'd love to see that kind of civic engagement come to town hall. In my travels this week, I've been to 6 town halls. We are the only town hall in the 4th Essex district that does not have ADA compliance. Even Little Rowley has an elevator, and they're rebuilding their ramp with the proper slope. They're doing that as I speak. So I think we have our work cut out for us, but I think if we start with the downtown and work our way down Route 1A, maybe we will get enough interest and critical mass to think about tackling that once and for all. I have been talking to Nancy Steffest about a peace garden, maybe at the Patton Park, a small peace garden. But it's just in the beginning stages. But if they do decide that's something the town wants to do, I would suggest going to the Cultural Council for grants and also for the CPC. And with that, I am done.
Thank you very much for that. It's important stuff and helpful. And then I think we just, Jamie, if you are in a position to give an update. I know you're remote right now.
Yeah, I have something brief, and I appreciate everybody letting me participate here from the airport. So if I get a really loud announcement, I might have to put you on mute it. But last week we had a Human Rights Commission meeting as well as Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust unanimously approved a little over $57,000 to go to the project that's underway on Asbury Street by Habitat for Humanity. These were some funds from the North Shore Home Consortium, and basically use them or lose them. And that's all I have for now.
All right, thanks, Jamie. And then Joe, if you've got anything on, I know you issued your report, but anything you want to summarize?
Yeah, I just, I'm gonna turn off my microphone so that, my speaker, rather. Sorry, let me get this done so that I don't have this feedback. Okay, so first thing I want to let people know is that the COVID case count in town right now is down to just 5 cases, including 2 twins that are only 2 years old, so they weren't able to be vaccinated. You know, just to let you know that approximately 73% of the town's eligible residents are now vaccinated, and 95% of the town's employees are vaccinated. So those are good words, good news. Special town meeting, as Bill alluded to, will be at Patton Park. We had a planning meeting for that with the public safety team and town moderator, et cetera, FinCom, last week, and we'll be able to put a tent on the field at Patton Park with a perimeter fence to manage entry and exit from the town meeting. And we're going to just keep doing it outside because it's the safest thing to do right now. Mm-hmm. Quick update, there's been some more progress. National Grid was here today, setting a new pole and moving, they'll be continuing the work this week, moving some equipment around to help with providing power from Bay Road back to the cell phone tower. The Grid did notify us late last week that an easement is going to be required from the town to allow them to access their equipment that's now in the trench, the conduit that's in the trench here beside Town Hall. And we have some upcoming master plan meetings that we wanted to let people know about. Those are printed in the town manager report, but just so people know, Thursday nights, September 23rd, October 14th, and October 28th are the next 3 master plan meetings. They'll be starting at 6 p.m. Via Zoom, and possibly some in-person component. And the town is working with Senator Bruce Tarr's North Shore Water Resiliency Task Force and IRWA on a couple of different grants. One that Senator Tarr was able to get funding from the legislature for, and one that the town of Hamilton is pursuing through the Sustainable Water Management Initiative. That grant program is, the application deadline is in October. We're working on a grant application to do some work studying what our alternative water sources could be and what challenges are presented so we can figure out ways to overcome those challenges to create a more sustainable water source for Hamilton residents. And keep your fingers crossed, but I'm hoping to have our biweekly e-newsletter return on Friday. So.
Okay, and then if you can, I know, Joe, there's been a lot of discussion about some of our Zoom technology woes as we went to a webinar-based Zoom format. Some of our meetings are getting larger and more more participation from the community. So maybe you can give a quick update on what we're doing to alleviate any Zoom technical issues we've had over the past couple weeks.
Certainly, with the help of HWCAM, we've been able to hire somebody, a technical consultant, who, just on an hour basis, to come in. He'll be at the next couple meetings that are going to be using Zoom as a webinar, and he'll be creating both a training and a kind of a sheet for us to refer to, so that all the staff that has to deal with these meetings and any of the time that it goes to a webinar, because there is some different functionality with that. So between the hybrid, between going to these hybrid types of meetings like we're running tonight and having those also be over Zoom webinar, we're retraining some of our staff that, to help them with that, and having a technical consultant available to assist. So we have a meeting tomorrow night that will be the test of that plan, and I'm expecting it'll go much better. So.
Okay. All right, if that's it, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. First agenda item is approved meeting minutes of the August 2nd, 2021 meeting. Number 2 is approved sale of cemetery lots to former longtime residents. Number 3 is approved use of $6,120 in perpetual care funds for cemetery improvements. Number 4 is, and the last one is to approve a gift of $250 from the Institution for Savings for the Senior Garden Tea Party.
I move we approve all items on the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Darcy, second. And then further discussion. So, Joe, if you can just give a quick, maybe interesting to know what we're doing with the cemetery improvements.
There's some, that was in your packet, let me pull it up. It's basically for some reseeding and things. So remember last year we had some
Yes.
problems out there.
Town.
The grubbing, yeah.
Ground
Treatment and
maintenance, right?
reseeding, so we're continuing that progress. Obviously, the cemetery looks a lot better this year because we had started that program last year, and the plan is to continue to do that annually so that we keep the cemetery looking the way it is.
Any further discussion?
No?
No, I think it's great.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start on the remote. We'll start with Jamie. I know anyone might have to get on his plane there. Jamie?
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale?
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell?
John Farrell, aye.
Rosemary?
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And William Olson, aye. All right, so we have a few things on our agenda tonight. Number 1 is the National Grid poll hearing
Sabita's here.
for Willow Street and underground power facilities. So we have a discussion and a vote. So, and who's going to present that today?
Sabita Mahavir from National Grid is here.
Okay, so do we want
Does someone have the language for it? Does she have the language for it? Doesn't we usually have to do a,
It was in your packets.
in the packet?
I don't
You
have
can
hard
put
copies
it
for
up.
I have it here. Hold on a
I
second.
do, I can put it up.
So, yeah, if you put it up, I can read it.
Yeah.
That's the easement.
That's the wrong one, hold on. Where is it? There it is.
I don't have to read the whole thing, Sean. I don't, it's a 5-page document, but let's let let's let it be presented, and then we can
Yeah,
make a
exactly.
motion and have discuss it. So, Joe, can you?
Sabita, you here? Do you want to,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. This is to provide service to the multi-unit building at 5663 Willow Street in Hamilton. It's the installation of 2 4-inch PVC conduits encased in concrete from the pole across the street to the property line, and then it's an easement. And it's approximately 48 feet plus or minus going across the public way.
I can't hear.
I can't keep that on because then it creates feedback on the Zoom. That was what was one of the problems that we had. The technical consultant helped us figure out.
Basically, right, she just stating that they're doing this work at,
So is it all underground?
Yes.
Do you want me to put up the image?
yep,
Sure.
there you go.
Yeah, okay.
At page 5.
Yeah.
And there's no pole adding or pole removal, correct?
No, we're upgrading facilities in the area to provide the three-phase service for the underground portion.
Will this eliminate any poles that you'll have to take down?
Sorry, no.
Okay.
And the property owners are aware of this? That's it's gonna go across the property, right?
It's not, it looks like it's going across the street and right onto their property.
But not through their property? That's what I'm trying to
It's
figure out the
going
drawing.
to their property.
Yeah, to their property.
It's not going on anybody else's property, just across the street.
Okay.
Right, because this is max right here, right?
Yeah.
Just want to read through real quick. So Sean, why don't you make a motion and we can discuss it?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the underground petition for burying power lines underneath Willow Street to, what was the address again?
56 to 63.
56 to 63 Willow Street.
Maybe we should use the word easement in there somewhere too.
No, the easement is on their property.
Yeah, we're just doing the street, correct?
Correct.
There is no easement on here.
Okay, second.
A second, so further discussion.
Yeah, so I have a question.
Yes.
Who is going to incur the cost of this, and who is going to incur the cost of repairing the trenches once the work is complete?
I'd like more.
I can't hear you. There's a lot of feedback.
That's okay.
Okay. My question is, who is going to be responsible for repair of the road after this work is complete?
It would be the contractor doing the job at this location.
Is that somewhere in this, in this agreement?
It's in their agreement.
So
And do you know if it will be, it's gonna take some time to do the install, the cut and the repaving and stuff. Do you know if this will be kind of
Details.
over a few days or 1 day, 2 days? Do you know the time frame?
That would be part of their road opening permit with the town. In a situation like this, we get the petition, we will end up getting the inheriting, for a lack of a better word,
Right?
everything that they put in, but it has to be put into our specs, and they're the ones incurring the cost.
Gotcha.
They'll file with DPW to get a permission for road opening permit.
Wait, so who's paying for this?
The
The
developer.
contractor,
Developer, okay.
And-
The
and he
developer.
is-
Part of their contract.
Are they on
cost.
this, are they here? Are they here today or not?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
No,
I
you
would,
don't
I would
normally
like
have-
to see that in writing, that they're going to assume all costs for opening and closing the road, and for any police details that are necessary.
Can you make that a
that would
condition
all
of
be
the
part of
approval?
the road opening permit with the DPW.
I can't hear it.
Yeah, she said it'd be part of the road opening permit with DPW. We require that all the time when
I did.
anyone wants us to open a road. We
Right.
require that.
Either one would be
With
interesting.
them getting a permit, they don't get it without agreeing to that.
Who
But
pays for details?
They'll pay with the
Thank
details.
They pay details too, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see that in writing, so that we're absolutely clear about that.
Would you make that, would you be willing to make that as an amendment to the motion so that we
Yes.
can go forward?
Okay. Did you want me to do that now,
Yeah,
or?
go for it.
Okay. So I'd like to amend the motion, Sean's motion, to include the terminology that the developer will be responsible for any costs incurred opening the road, for police detail, and for proper closing of the road and paving over of any areas that have been disturbed.
And, yeah, any restoration required.
Second.
Right, and all restoration required.
Second.
That was second, okay.
Second from Darcy.
Okay.
Joe, is there anything else that we aren't thinking about or need to discuss on this? I mean,
It's,
it seems pretty typical, but I just want to make sure we're not missing something.
the only thing atypical is we're just starting to see a lot of these go under the road that, typically you always had them as poles, but now
Okay.
it's the same kind of stuff.
Just bearing it all now.
Yeah,
And
and it's gonna be.
is there
more
a
of that
time
going
frame they
forward.
want to do this work?
I think that they want it to happen as soon as possible. They
we just-
need to get power to the building so they can continue to work inside the building. The structure of the building's going up, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure our colleagues can hear this conversation.
I can hear it.
You can? Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're doing
So be
better than I
careful. No,
am.
no, I'm kidding.
Darcy or Jamie, do you have any more comments on this before we vote on it? But I'm fine with moving forward with a vote. I think it's a pretty typical install as long as we agree the contractor is responsible to get with our DPW department, make sure they meet all the requirements. Darcy or Jamie, anything else?
I'm ready to vote.
I'm gonna vote on the amendment first.
any
and then
questions?
on the amended
We're
motion.
going to vote on the amended motion.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll vote on the amended
Who's
motion.
going to vote on the amended motion? So right now, we're going to vote on the amended motion,
Correct.
which includes Sean's language and Rosemary's language.
Right.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with, is Jamie still there? Jamie Newton?
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale?
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell?
Sean Farrell, aye.
And Rosemary Kennedy?
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And William Olson, aye.
Now we can vote on the whole
Yeah.
bang.
Let's do it again? Okay.
Yep, do it
No,
right.
Now we vote on the whole motion.
Yep.
Roll call vote, start with Jamie Knutson,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
and William Olson, aye. So, Joe, what do we need to sign? Do we need to sign anything
Yep, there's
today? Okay.
It's here, it's in here.
Okay. All right, so we can sign afterwards?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the review draft warrant articles for the October 23rd, 2021 special town meeting, and then vote on the draft warrant articles. So I know you sent out a few versions. Joe, do you want to pull up the
The most recent one, yeah, Tom should be on any minute. now
most
as
recent
well.
one, and we can talk about which, I know we have another thing on the agenda to talk about.
Do we need to close the poll hearing?
Probably, yeah, that's a good call, Sean, sorry.
So I'll, sorry if I interrupt,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to close the poll hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? So we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Jamie Knutson,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Tim Olson, aye. All right, so Joe, so on the agenda, just so we do things in the right way, but we have the review of the warrant articles, and then we have to reopen the warrant. So was that in the right order? Do we want to reopen the warrant and then review the articles, or does it not matter what order we're in?
I think it may as well reopen, and you can take it out of
Okay.
order, reopen it first.
I'll take it out of order. So can I have a motion to?
Move to reopen the special town meeting warrant.
Do I have a
So
second?
moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? We'll have plenty of discussion on those warrant articles, but I think, yeah, we have some articles that we need to put on there for some unpaid bills and some administrative items to take care of underground utility easement to get the cell phone tower up and active without having to wait any longer for that safety issue. So we'll do a roll call vote on opening the STM warrant. We'll start with Jamie Knutson,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
William Olson, aye. All right, so Joe, I think we can kind of put these things together. So
Yep.
do you want to guide us down the pathway of
Well, it
what
just-
makes sense to talk about first?
Yeah, so, I mean, initially, just for clarity, when Bill and I discussed having this on the agenda, the only thing we were planning to add at that time was the unpaid bill. So, as luck would have it, the day after you close the warrant, literally the day after you close the warrant, I got an email. There was a $34 unpaid bill.
Right.
So I brought that to Bill's attention, and we had talked about reopening the warrant to address that issue. Fortunately, town council keeps a placeholder warrant article in the warrant anyway, so that was already in his draft warrant. We just hadn't approved it, so we were going to bring it back to you to have you do that. But as we were working with National Grid to get stuff taken care of out here with the resetting the pole and moving around the transformer thing, it came to light, and they had not made us aware. Back in July, we had received notification from both National Grid and the cell phone provider, cell tower company, that the license that you had issued them to proceed with the work was sufficient, and they were going to move forward. So that's exactly what they told us. It's sufficient, we'll move forward, we'll start the work. So, we went from being above and wires above to being underground, but we got all that worked out. They started pulling the conduit. But last week, National Grid notified us that once all the work was done, in order for them to turn the power on, they'd need the easement.
Right.
At which time I said, well, I wish I'd known that before, because I
Right.
could have put it on the agenda to have it on the warrant.
You and me
So
both.
they, so I told Bill about it, and we put it here before you today.
Yeah, so right, so.
Tom did quickly draft an easement article for you, so the version I have up here does include that if the board decides to vote and add it.
Is this the one that you sent to us, Joe, or is
This
this the new
afternoon,
one?
I sent it to you this afternoon.
Yeah. So just to go back, this has been voted on in town meeting many times. The plan was always to go to, always to get the power to the street. And so now what National Grid is saying, that in order for them to, it's a policy that they have, that in order to be able to access their power at any point, they just need to have an easement, so it allows them to, but it's underground, doesn't affect any, but because it's a property issue, it needs to be a 51%, simple majority vote at town meeting. So it needs to be on the warrant so it can get voted on. If we were at a consent agenda, but we probably only have 5 articles to vote, so we're probably not even gonna have a consent agenda, so I think, I think it makes sense to talk about it now. I don't think it's too late to put on the warrant, because once again, it's already been approved through a town meeting vote previously and through a license that we've issued. And this is to just, I think, National Grid was late informing us of what they actually needed to do it, and we've been trying to be proactive with them, and unfortunately, this slipped through the cracks on their end communication-wise. So it's all it is for the underground conduit, just to have an easement in case they ever need to access it.
Good to me.
Do you want me to go to that article
Is there
so
any?
you can look at it?
So
We don't need to do anything with prior year bills. You're just going to punch in the $34 in the
Yep,
2-1,
Yeah,
right?
that one is just going to stay as it is in the draft warrant,
And
and
now
we'll
you're-
just add in $34. Instead of removing it from the warrant, we'll just add in the $34.
can you just
in the
pull
bill.
up can you just pull up the easement?
Yep, I'm going to it right now.
So we can read through it. Just so we're not missing something, so we get it right this time.
Okay,
We
sounds
got
good.
one more time to get it right.
And election staffing is a special election.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Name change, and then
Full petition, that was already there. Yeah, I'll try and increase the,
Easement to National Grid. Yeah.
try and increase the size here.
So, is this a proper time to ask the question about the easement, or do you want to wait until we look at the,
I want to read through the amendment.
okay.
Do we need to make a motion to put it on? We don't need to make a motion to put it on the.
You need to make a motion to put it into the
yeah,
warrant.
we need to
Okay.
make a motion.
So let's make a motion, then we'll go through and discuss it, and then we'll vote on it. So,
So I'll make a motion that we include Article 2021 /10 3-4, authorization to convey easement to National Grid hyphen 577 Bay Road. And the general purpose is to energize our cell phone tower so that can move on.
Second.
okay, a second, so further discussion. So, for that, first I want to sort of just read through, I just want to read the article, so everybody says, well, here's what it says. But to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to grant to Massachusetts Electric Company, also known as National Grid, on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deem appropriate, a permanent utility easement in, through, under, over, and across a portion or portions of the town-owned property located at 577 Bay Road, and described in deeds dated April 8th, 1897, in Book 1514, page 354, April 26, 1926, in Book 2678, page 49, November 26, 1979, in Book 6679, page 747, and March 13th, 1982, in Book 6938, page 48. Recorded with the Essex South County Registry of Deeds, which portion or portions are approximately shown on the sketch plan on file with the town clerk, or take any action thereon or relative thereto. So it's pretty simple in terms of, it talks about an easement, and it leaves it very general, where it says, in, through, over, under, and across. what we're talking specifically here is under. And it's been coordinated with DPW and any other work that we've, that we want to do in the future, on town hall property. So that's sort of where it sits right now. And it's been installed, so
Well,
it has not been energized, though.
And I'd add too that, this work, this conduit would also benefit a future town hall renovation project if it ever gets approved, because we were planning to
Right,
do
we'd
this for the
tap
town
into
hall
that.
project anyway. So the point that the conduit runs to is exactly the same point that we were planning to use for the town hall renovation as well.
Right.
So.
Okay, so Rosemary, I recognize you. You said you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and it involves financial expenditures. So I understand that this easement is, of course, on town property. However, this cell tower is owned by a private entity. So my question is, if there's work that needs to be done, although certainly the town is a beneficiary of this, who is responsible for costs such as we just discussed with the Willow Street project? Digging up and then repairing the roadway in the driveway.
If it's National Grid's equipment that needs to be maintained, it'll be National Grid. And if it's the cell phone company's equipment that needs to be maintained, it'll be their equipment, it'll be their cost.
Okay, and we don't need to make a special amendment to that fact?
Well, if National Grid wants to fix their material, they need permission to get to it. That's what they need the easement for, but they don't expect us to pay for it.
Okay, well, I'm asking the question because it's
I'm
on.
just saying, with all respect, I'm just trying to answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah, any repair would need to be done. It's similar to any repair anywhere, that they come in and
Right.
they dig it up and they fix it and they
Yeah,
repair it.
yeah, no,
But the cell phone company leases property. There's an agreement in the lease that states that any repairs are the responsibility of the lease. So,
Okay.
but no, I think it's a good question to ask. But yeah, I don't think we're putting the town at risk for any future costs by with this easement.
That's fine. Okay,
Yep.
super. Thank you.
One caveat I'd say is if, again, because of the place where it runs to, if we decide to upgrade Town Hall and that requires increasing the way power comes to this building, that cost would be ours.
That's
Right.
understandable.
Us.
Right.
Tapping into that or
Tapping into that at some point.
digging down to that would be.
And I mean, just for specific, Joe, roughly half of the conduit goes across grass and the other half goes through pavement, correct?
Yeah.
It's about half under asphalt and half under grass, so it's not under anything that's expensive to replace also, just for that knowledge.
Right.
Right, there's no infrastructure.
There's no
that's really
infrastructure
going
goes
underneath,
under it.
right.
It's just blacktop or.
Right, but
grass.
that also incurs,
costs,
it incurs an expense, and it's just good to understand all of this right
Well,
from the
yeah,
get-go.
and Joe, DPW will have an accurate as-built of where that is, correct? Okay.
They
How far-
participated in helping lay it out, so it's-
I'm sorry, how deep is that conduit? How deep
6
will that
feet.
trench?
I think it's 6 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're right. They go below the frost line, which is like 4 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, Knutson, or Darcy, you have any further questions on the Article 2021-10-3-4?
I do not.
Nor do I.
Good.
I think that was a no.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, we'll go to a roll call vote. We'll start with Jamie Knutson.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Is this for both adding $32?
No, this is just this is just Article 10-3-4.
Correct.
Sorry, Jamie Knutson,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
William Olson, aye. So we will look forward to this, closing the book on this tower so that we have this up and running as quickly as we can vote on it, and then National Grid can coordinate the energy. But it's good to know they're out here today.
Yep.
So we're moving forward, and I think they will, if you can inform them, Joe, tomorrow, that we have voted to include it on the warrant, and they don't need to wait until spring.
I will definitely do that. And I'd say that, now might be a time to make sure we were worried about having a quorum. So anybody that was worried about the telephone tower that wanted to see when it was going to get up should show up at town meeting and
Yes,
vote on
and vote
this.
for it, so we can get it.
That's right.
While you're there, we can have you vote on the other 4 articles.
Right, exactly.
Help us.
So I'll
great.
also
Put it
make a new
last.
motion for Article 2021 /10 2-1 prior year bills and updating the language in the warrant, the placeholder to the amount of $34.00 from a prior year bill.
So moved.
We have a second.
I mean, second, sorry.
Okay.
Should we calculate the,
Do we want to have any,
from the tax rate?
any?
Just kidding.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, Jamie Knutson,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Tim Olson, aye. All right, so Joe, I'll turn it back to you, and you can tell us anything else on the,
And Joe, you're going to fill in the number on 2-2?
Yes,
Okay.
I've got it from Alex and Diane, I just don't have it in here, but other than that, we just want to review this language with you. We'll fill in the details and then circulate it to you and the FinCom for votes. I believe we're planning a joint meeting if the FinCom can accommodate us on the 4th of October,
I think that was the
So-
general thought, right?
to be able to take votes so that we
Yes.
can get the book of
Yeah.
recommendations
Yeah.
out by the 8th. Okay,
correct.
all right. Did you have any other questions about any, Tom is here if you have any other questions about any of the other articles or,
There were a lot of notes on the right-hand side about, to Tom's notes. Do we want to go through those and make sure they're all accurate?
yeah, I think,
I just have a question since we're kind of looking at the articles. For the election staffing, when Corinne came and talked to us, she kind of said it would be around 14 or be somewhere between 14 and 19,000.
yeah.
So since we really don't know until after the fact, how do we rectify that kind of after the fact? I know if we're under 14,000, we're fine because we're appropriating 14,000, but if we go over that, can you explain to me what happens? I can't remember.
So one of the, and I know that you had a further conversation, a further email, a dialogue with folks at the State House, and there's likely to be some amount.
Because we're hoping for some funding, right, from the
There'll be
state.
likely some amount of state assistance on this, but we just don't know what it is.
Right.
And plus, we can always find ways to, live within our budget. If it's less than $5,000, we can usually figure out a
Right.
way to do it. But if it's
another
19,000,
20 or
14 to
something.
19,000, it becomes much
Yeah.
more difficult. So I think the idea here was to ask for the 14, because that's the amount that, if we get it, we'll be able to live with the cost within
Okay.
that.
Fair enough.
All right, Joe, if you can go up to the top of the page.
Most of these are just notes to, okay. Okay, so,
No, all the way up,
oh,
sorry.
hold on, up top.
all the way to the top.
This thing is, it's so hard to do this without a mouse. Okay.
All right, yes, okay, perfect. So, are we including the appendix?
Well, yeah, I
Appendix?
think we can probably take this out, because the only appendices have to do with the one article for 550 Highland, and I think it's only 2 pages, so I
Okay.
think we'll just add it in and
Just,
include
yeah,
it.
just include it right in
Yeah.
there.
Next one is the childcare.
I'll have to check with the school. I'm not sure if that's available, especially nowadays in the COVID world. I'm not sure how we do
We
do
probably need to
that.
take that out then.
Yeah.
I'd recommend that we don't do it and that we,
Okay.
and then the next comment is the appendices again, which we talked about,
Yeah, we can take that out, again, take that out.
page 3. I left this in, but I can remove it if we're not going to have a consent motion.
Yeah, so
When do we need to decide that?
you probably,
Tonight?
you can probably just do that on the, you can try to do it, you can do it tonight if you want. You're looking at the articles, you're gonna have to have a full conversation on the budget article.
But if we vote on the 4th, we can decide this on the
We can
4th,
decide this
correct?
on the 4th.
Okay,
and we can
so we'll
just
leave
move
that
it
to the
before we
4th.
send it to the printer.
To a joint meeting.
Yep.
So, and,
I don't think that'll be a very long conversation, so I don't think it matters if we do it tonight or on the 4th, really, does it?
Well, we got to do, when are we going to vote whether we recommend favorable action?
On the 4th,
On the
On the
4th,
4th.
right? So it's going to,
it's fine.
might as well have
We
that be the
talked
same
about it anyway,
discussion.
so
Right.
Might as well do it then.
When you look at what the articles are, you're not gonna be able to put the 550 Highland
Right.
or the prior
There's
year
only
bills
like
on
2
the.
things that we can put on the consent anyway.
At most, you'd be
so-
able to put 2 things.
Right.
So, not a very big warrant, so.
Article 10, 2-2, Tom Magrum says, please confirm. That's just a number?
No, he's asking, he's asking to present that I confirm the pre-summary, so.
Okay.
Seeks to reduce the amount raised appropriate, and it's right, it's accurate, but I know that the board and the FinCom like to work on the summaries a little bit, so I wasn't gonna change it until you had a conversation about it.
The Board of Selectmen name change, he just had a note about that we should show a red line version so people know what we've changed.
Okay, we'll create that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I could create that, and, there's also been a question that's come up here. This says select board in 2 words, or select board is 1 word. Do you have a preference? Do you want to just put that in?
I think
as
it should be 1.
Ask the town meeting to choose, approve one way or the other, but it might get confusing if we don't decide
Right.
which way you want that to be.
Is there a
And
proper?
Joe, it's Tom. I mean, I've seen it both ways. Some towns have it as 2 words, some have it as 1 word. So it's really just a point of preference for the board, how the board would like to spell it.
Anybody have a personal preference? As long as it's the same meaning, I mean.
Yeah, I like the 1 word. It's easier than when you type, you don't have to do a capital B.
I'm fine with that. Make it 1 word. That way it's capital S, lowercase b. That's fine.
I'm
with me.
looking at like Town of Arlington is 2 words.
Is it?
Great Barrington, Mass is 1 word. Reading, Mass is 2 words. Plymouth is 2 words. Brookline's 2 words. Natick's 2 words.
I kind of like
South
it,
Hadley,
too.
Mass is 1 word.
I
Belmont's 2
kinda
words. So
like
yeah, it
that.
goes back and forth.
Yeah, I kind of like the 2 words.
The 2 words will give you an easy abbreviation going forward, because BOS has always been your abbreviation now, so
Right.
you'll be switching to SB.
SB, yeah.
Yeah, because then it would just be S.
But that's even less typing.
Even less typing, Darcy. I like your thinking there, Darcy.
I'm in favor of 2 words because select board's not really a word. So that kind of bothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Not really
think
a word,
it's
but I'm in favor
Well,
of
it is
2
a
words.
word.
Do 2 words.
good, yeah, I
Okay,
like that.
I'll make that change.
Darcy.
Even less typing, I like it.
Maybe we just need a symbol
Always
like Prince
thinking.
or something.
So and then this comment here is about, having the red line version so that people can see.
You can
where
see the
it's
change,
so,
yeah.
Right. No, yeah, we found that to be the most helpful way to do it. That way, the warrant article is relatively kind of general in a sense that it doesn't go through each line item in either the zoning or the general bylaws that's going to be actually changed. So if someone is interested in seeing specifically where the changes will be made, it's our opinion that the town create red line versions that just show like where it said Board of Selectmen, now it says Select Board. There are likely going to be some other changes that are required as well. If it refers to like he, for example, just change it so it's a gender neutral term, as well as there could be instances where just, it might say the board was and it needs to be changed to were, things like that, some grammatical changes that need to be made. So it's best, so in our experience, the best way to do that is through a red line version that just can be put on file with the town clerk in case anybody's interested in seeing the exact changes.
All right.
So, yeah. That's fine. Sorry, I was jumping ahead.
Somebody else want to talk?
So on Article 10, 3-3, we haven't really talked about this because the 550 Highland Street. So Tom, what you did here is you're trying to petition the special act that we passed in 2020 so you're sort of referencing that, correct?
That's correct. I talked to Joe a little bit about this as well. So in reviewing this and just thinking about it a little bit further after discussions that we previously had, my thought was the easiest way to do this is to just amend the existing special act rather than create a new special act. And we already have an act that's been approved by the legislature, and simply what we're doing here, as I understand it, is to just change it so that the town has the authority to abate paid taxes, because the existing legislation only authorized the town to abate and exempt from collection unpaid taxes. So this makes it's a relatively simple change. I thought that this was probably the easiest way to do it, and also the most it would be the I don't know that something like this would ever really face any kind of opposition at the State House, but it seemed like it would be the easiest way to eliminate any potential opposition and hopefully streamline the process so that we can get it done and through the legislature more quickly, because it's really a simple change to just add those two words, or paid.
Yeah, I think that's good, making an amendment instead of
Yeah,
a whole nother.
I think
Makes
I think procedurally it makes sense. My only two questions were, one is that, do we need to wait for them to vote on it before we refund the taxes?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah,
It
the
says
AG
that
has
in
to
there.
Which
approve
could
of
take a while.
It says that in there, but it,
Well, I just wanted to make sure, because it could take a little, I mean,
it could take
a
up
while.
to 6 months,
Could take-
probably.
And number two is, I really want to have the amount in here, because I think we've gone back and forth and saying enough time where
We
we've
can get things
thought we
on.
understood each other, but we didn't. I want to make sure we're crystal clear on what
Yeah.
the refund is. So if we can put the amount in here, Joe.
okay.
And then has this language been viewed by the 550 Highland Street residents?
I don't know that it has, but I can send it to them.
I would please like you to send it to them. Okay. And our assessor's office has seen this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Jamie Knudsen here. I guess it says to refund unpaid real estate taxes. Is that
Jamie?
accurate? I thought the point was they had paid them.
Sorry, Jamie, can you say that again?
So it says that we're refunding or abating unpaid real estate taxes, but aren't we abating taxes they've paid?
Correct.
Is it- that-
Are you referring to, so the name of the actual legislation that was passed, which is included in Chapter 174 of the Acts of 2020, is an act exempting from taxation certain property under the Historic Curatorship Program. And the reference, I think that was included, I'm not sure where the reference is, but previously, the legislation authorized unpaid taxes, and then so in the summary, that it references what the existing legislation authorized, and then it further states that the point of this amendment is to authorize the town to abate paid taxes. And Exhibit A adds the words "or paid" after the word "unpaid," and I think it was Section 2 of the Act.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going
I
to
get
it right
it.
now. So
Strike my question.
you got that?
Yeah, so Jamie, previously we did vote to abate unpaid taxes. Now we're voting to abate paid taxes. So that's part two. So part one, which was done in 2020, was to abate unpaid taxes, and now we're going to vote to abate paid taxes.
I got it. Thanks.
I think that was all
We have
the,
not voted on this one,
no.
so we need to vote on this tonight too, correct?
Oh, yes, previously you only voted, well, you don't have to vote to make a recommendation, but you can vote on the.
To make
you
a
had
motion to put it on
Voted
the,
to put this in the warrant last
Yeah.
time.
oh, we did? Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the warrant, we just haven't made a recommendation.
Station, okay.
Did we vote to put it on the warrant?
You did.
We did.
When
We just
closed the
never,
warrant, it
we just
included
never,
this.
we just didn't have the language.
We just didn't have
Okay,
language. Now
okay.
you have all the language, so,
I would like to make a motion to approve the language, because I think this is such an important issue that I don't want to do anything wrong on this thing, so.
Okay,
let's-
so
even
moved.
before the,
I would say we should let,
550 gets to see it?
yeah, we should let
Oh.
them and the
Okay.
council review it, just to cross our T's and
Yes.
dot our I's, and then we can talk
The
about it
next time.
And
We'll-
then-
we'll
and
have-
put- so
we'll
you're
have
gonna
it
let them
That's what I
review
would
it, and you're gonna
recommend
put the,
Be on the 4th.
you're gonna let them review it, and you're gonna put the,
The exact.
dollar amount on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
It's good.
Right, and I believe there was some discussion at the last board meeting as well about interest. And I know that, I think the thought was that we would agree to abate the taxes that were paid, which was, I don't recall the exact number, I know it was like $13,000 and change. And that the town was not agreeable to paying any interest on those unpaid taxes,
Yeah,
is my
the board
recollection
also had
from
some
the
discussion
last
about-
discussion.
The board had also had some discussion about whether or not to pay it over a course of time or not. And after reviewing the situation, it's only $13,000. We reviewed it with the finance department, and there's ample funds in the assessor's overlay, which is the appropriate place for payment like this to come from. So.
Just pay it in one lump sum.
We're paying in one lump sum, yes, so
we're
that's the difference,
proposing
yeah.
this to pay it in
Right.
one lump sum,
Good.
and therefore you get away from
Right.
the whole conversation about interest came up with the suggestion of paying it over 2 or 3 years, so.
Right, well, that's.
Okay.
that's-
And did the board want me to, because we can I can add language to the warrant article to say something to the effect of that said tax abatement shall be paid from the overlay account, after the effective date
Right.
of the special act authorized hereunder. The abatement shall be in the amount of X without interest or something to that effect, if, just to make it more clear what the board's position
Make it crystal
is.
clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
In one payment.
one
payment,
without
yeah.
interest, yeah, super.
Okay,
I think it gets too confusing if you're trying to break it up over.
yeah. No, I-
especially for people
It's
reading
too much
the
work.
I
articles.
didn't realize they had enough funds, so it was good that we were able to do it in one lump
Yeah,
payment.
There's
Alright.
enough fun in the assessor's overlay, so.
Tom, anything else we need to talk about on the warrant?
No, the only piece of information that I'll need to get there is just the exact dollar amount that the refund check will be for. So I don't recall I know it's 13,000 and change, but I
I
don't
have
recall the exact
a
number.
bunch of emails on it, I'll forward you the email.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure I probably have something as well, but I know, I just wanted to confirm the dollar amount to make sure I was accurate.
You know what, that's coming from that dollar amount's been coming from the residents, I would just have the assessors just
Yeah, I'll
double
get
check.
the number from
Yeah,
the
we'll
assessor.
verify with
Yeah.
the assessor's office.
Okay,
While we have Tom here, and rather than keep him for the whole night, would you
Yeah.
want to take the 2 down, discussion of draft special liquor license?
yeah, liquor license, so let's jump ahead. So we have to have a vote to close the warrant?
Yep.
Yeah,
I make a motion that we close the warrant for the October special town meeting.
You sure?
And
You sure?
I'm sure. We can always reopen it, but I don't want to.
I'm not planning.
Any
to-
further discussion? All right, we'll start with Jamie Knutson,
Amy Knutson, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell,
Farrell, aye.
and Rosemary Kennedy.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
William Olson, aye. So good work on that. So now we're going to jump ahead and we're going to talk, because we have Tom on, talk about a discussion on drafting our special one-day liquor license for events on a town property which aren't covered underneath the AABC permit, because one, they're private, and two, they're on town property. So, so we had drafted up that we had taken a template that we liked, and we had made some comments on it. I think, Tom, before we finalize our draft, we had a few questions for you on, let me just pull mine up here, sorry. We had a few questions here. One was, so Rosemary sent an email today,
Saturday.
Saturday, that I read today, about the catering license, and about whether the 12C caterer's license can apply to events on town-owned property. I thought it could be. I didn't see a reference where it couldn't be, but I just wanted you to clarify if the 12C caterer's license can be used for events on town-owned property.
Sure. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I read Rosie's email as well, and it actually raised an interesting question, and not one that I had addressed before. And so my assumption kind of when I first looked at it and has always been that, well, okay, if it's just because it's a town-owned building, such as the Patton Homestead that's used for different types of events, that it would seem to me that a caterer's license would be okay if you brought a caterer in to cater an event, that you wouldn't necessarily need to get a one-day license. However, the ABCC's website is somewhat, it's just confusing, frankly, with respect to this issue. So when you go to their website and you look up what's required for a caterer's license, it specifically says that for events on public property, you're required to get a one-day license, which frankly does not make a lot of sense to me if the event is being catered by a licensed caterer who has a license under Chapter 138, Section 12C. Under normal circumstances, if it was a private event hall or function room, the caterer's license would cover the service of alcohol under those circumstances, and you wouldn't need to also apply for a one-day license. So I put a call in today so to the ABCC's general counsel, who I've had dealings with for many years, to try to get some clarification on this issue, but unfortunately I did not hear back today. So as soon as I get clarification from her, I can certainly update you through Joe on what she has to say. But it was kind of I'd just be kind of hypothesizing why their website has that language included in it. But my guess would be that they want to avoid a situation where a city or town is at their quota and they have a caterer who comes in and essentially kind of opens up shop, so to speak, and allows for essentially the public to come to an event and drink alcohol, where essentially you'd be allowing a bar, an additional bar beyond what your quota permitted. And that obviously would not be the case at a private event being held at the Patent Homestead, where somebody rents out the facility from the town for the purposes of holding a private event. So I don't know that the website kind of takes that type of a situation into consideration. I do know that there are many towns that own buildings that are used for events. So this is not a novel issue in that sense, but it's not one that I've ever dealt with. And I did talk to a couple of my colleagues who also do alcohol licensing work, and they haven't dealt with this issue either. So I thought it was best to confer with the ABCC general counsel to get her opinion so that we're clear exactly what's required going forward.
That makes sense.
Okay, and I agree.
It
I did
seemed
this.
very circular when I read it.
Yes.
It didn't make any sense.
Rosie, excellent policy analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. I did the same thing you did, Tom, and I actually emailed them the question, and the response I got back was probably not as clear. And I'll forward you that response. I asked the same question, and they basically said, no, it's up to the town. It's basically up to
They just kicked it back.
if you're not selling, like ABC only wants to regulate the selling of alcohol. If you're not selling alcohol, then it's up to the governing body of the town, which would be here, our case would be the select board. But
Right, and generally speaking, with respect to one-day
licenses,
licenses, which the
to opine on it,
ABCC
then
has
that'd be
no
great.
jurisdiction over those are granted strictly at the local level. So they generally don't weigh in at all with respect to one-day licenses. So, but in this case, where their website specifically said that if it's in the section dealing with caterers licenses, that if the event is on public property, you have to get a one-day license. That, I think, creates some confusion whether or not it's permissible to have a caterer run an event at, in this case, Patent Homestead, which is a town-owned building, without getting a one-day license, or whether you're still required to get a one-day license, and then you could still hire a caterer, and then presumably the caterer would be licensed as well, which it just didn't make a lot of sense to me that you would need both licenses, because that's not something that would be required for a private event that's being held on private property. So a private event in a town-owned building that's being leased out to an individual for a private function, it didn't seem to me that the rules should really change whether or not you're required to get a one-day license. But like I said, the website is kind of confusing with respect to that issue.
Okay.
So I have another question for you, Tom, in relation to that. When you say that the ABCC does not get involved under a local licensing issue, but they get involved in the sense that they set the regs. Am I correct in that, or can we just set our own regs?
So for a one-day license, generally speaking, you would set your own regulations with respect to that. There's certain statutory requirements that would apply. For example, you can only get up to 30 in a year, 30 one-day licenses within a 1-year period. If you have an application pending, or if you actually have a liquor license, you can't get a 1-day license. For the service of, there's differences for the services of all alcohol versus beer and wine only. And that depends on whether you're a nonprofit. A nonprofit, for example, is allowed to get a 1-day license for all alcohol service, but a for-profit, I guess, or something that's not a nonprofit is limited to beer and wine only. So there are certain like statutory rules that apply, but the ABCC is not going to, they won't police it in the sense that they don't, they wouldn't, ever send an inspector down to determine whether or not somebody who's exercising a 1-day license is, complying with the terms of the license. It's up to the board to set like hours of operation. You can require as part of a 1-day license, for example, that somebody maintain certain levels of insurance. You could require that any servers be TIPS certified, for example, or ServSafe certified, those sorts of things. But the ABCC does not regulate those types of terms, and they don't have regulations that specifically relate to those issues.
Okay, so then I'm just a little confused then. So you just reiterated all of the regulations, so I'm not sure where we would expect to have wiggle room in granting a 1-day license. It is for a 1-day license is to be granted to these specific entities, a for-profit or a nonprofit or not-for-profit entity, or an incorporated educational facility. Do I understand that correctly, or can we enlarge the pool?
Well, the pool's set by statute, so it's either kind of a nonprofit or if it's or things other than a nonprofit. But like an individual can certainly apply for a 1-day license. A business, would designate a specific person as the manager for the event, but a corporate entity could certainly apply for a 1-day license. A nonprofit similarly can apply for a 1-day license, and they have to identify who the specific manager will be for purposes of filing the application and that sort of thing. But it's certainly, I think that kind of covers everything. It can be an individual, a corporation, or a nonprofit.
Right, exactly. Okay, but it can't be a private individual. That would have to go back to a 12C caterer who would be the responsible, the licensed person for the private event.
Well, you could have, if a person didn't hire a caterer or a licensed caterer, and a person wanted to have a private event at which alcohol service would be part of the event. So where there's, and by service, I mean actually a sale of alcohol, whether it's a cash bar or whether it involves, like a cover charge, or somebody buys a ticket to attend the event and then there's alcohol being served for purposes of, the definition of alcohol service for licensing purposes. Any of those types of transactions would constitute the sale of alcohol for which a license would be required. So an individual could hold or host an event and not necessarily hire a caterer or a licensed caterer, in which case the person could get a 1-day license.
If I'm not sure how that would happen then. I think that's been the crux of the question here. We just went through the categories of rules for applying and being granted a 1-day license. It has to be one of those entities that you just enumerated. So I'm trying to understand I mean, if a person was having a private event on their property, of course, they don't need a one-day license or
Well, they
a
could
caterer.
actually, if it involves the sale of alcohol, if you had an event at your home, for example, where it was, say you were hosting a fundraiser for a particular organization or for a political candidate or whatever it may be, and people pay money to attend that event.
Right.
So they hand you they pay $100, they get a ticket to attend. That includes food and like an open bar, for example.
Right.
That would constitute the sale or service of alcohol for purposes of licensing. So you would need to, technically you would be required to get a one-day license to hold that event because it involves the sale of alcohol. Or if you held an event at your home that involved where similarly it was some sort of a fundraiser and you buy a ticket and there's a cash bar, for example, that involves obviously the sale of alcohol, and a one-day license would be required for that event. Now, in lieu of a one-day license, it's possible that if you hired a caterer who has a caterer's license that was issued by the ABCC.
Tom, sorry to cut you off, Tom, but I got to back up here because I think
not necessarily need to get a one-day license, but
Tom, sorry, I just want to just take a step back here.
Who's doing the service of the alcohol, and whether the server, whether it's private bartenders that you hire or whether it's a catering company, is licensed. But that would require a license of some sort, whether it's a caterer's license that would kind of cover the activity, or whether the person would have to get a one-day license. That type of an event, even though it's in a private home, would require a license.
Okay, so Tom, if you can hear me, I just want to back up here because I think we need to make before we get into detail, we need to make a clear distinction everybody understands. Okay, so Massachusetts State AABC, okay, that's one type of permit, right? Then there's the Hamilton permit. So there's two separate permits you could get. The Mass State AABC one-day special permit application is only used when it's a public event where alcohol is being sold. Is that correct?
So, no, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking exactly, but any kind of a one-day license that's issued under Chapter 138, Section 14 is not issued by the ABCC. The ABCC is not involved at all in that licensing. The ABCC is involved in issuing caterers licenses, which are not, the local cities and towns have no role whatsoever in licensing caterers. There's kind of joint, I guess, jurisdiction on your typical Section 12 or package store license. For example, for your basic kind of restaurant that's going to serve alcohol and food, for example, the licensing process involves both local as well as ABCC approval.
So we have two pieces of paper. Like, so when we had the shop local thing, they'd fill out two pieces of paper. They spelled out a special permit, and then they spelled out a Hamilton special liquor license. Do we need two applications, or can we just have one application?
I'm sorry, I'm not really sure. For what type of an event are you talking about?
All right, so let's back up here, Tom. I want to come up. We need to simplify this thing, okay? So
yeah.
So if there in Hamilton, if there is a public event, right, open to the public where alcohol is being sold, okay, which is completely different than Patton Park, but we just want to make sure not Patton Park didn't patent the Patton Estate, but we have a public, like we had this weekend where we had the fall festival, right? And we had a public event where alcohol is being sold and served. We made them abide by the AABC regulations, which was a for-profit enterprise, and they need to go through certain regulations to abide by the AABC. So we want to make that a clear distinction of what those things are. What we as the select board cannot govern because it has to abide by what the AABC regulates when it says, right? And that's for-profit and non-profit public event where alcohol is being sold. As I understand, those are we only have to abide by the AABC if it's a public event where alcohol is being sold for either a profit enterprise or for non-profit enterprise.
So if it's a one-day license, for example, if you're going to hold an event at Patton Park, for example, so it's publicly owned park, and you're going to hold an event at the park. Yeah, in that instance, then it would be a one-day license that's whoever's hosting the event would come into the town and file an application for a one-day license. That license is approved by the Board of Selectmen. The ABCC is not involved at all in the issuance or
And what is
approval
what
of
is this
that
back up?
license.
What is the AABC involved with? What events in town do we need to abide by the AABC regulations?
So any licensed any licensed business in town, any restaurant, bar, anybody, or
No,
any
for the one
package
day,
store
for the
and
ABC
things like
one
that
day.
would all be subject to.
Sorry, Tom, the one day. The one day AABC regulations.
There's no ABCC one-day rules or regulations. The statute says that for a one-day license for a nonprofit can get an all-alcohol license for a one-day event. For anything but a nonprofit, you're limited to beer and wine. That's a statute. That doesn't have anything to. It's not the ABCC specifically that has that regulation.
So I guess I'm even more confused now.
Yeah, it's. I'll tell you, as I said to Joe when I was talking to him earlier, the area of alcohol licensing in Massachusetts is probably one of the more confusing aspects of law in the state. It's not easy to kind of follow some of this. A lot of it's not intuitive. It doesn't always seem logical, but it's the system that we have.
So Tom, what I'm going to suggest to you is I'm going to send you a document that I drafted up that I took from a couple templates I found online, and we need to create a policy in Hamilton where we tell people what they do for two types of events. One type of event is a public event on private property where alcohol is being sold either for a profit or a non-profit event, and we need to make sure people clearly understand what they're doing. And then the next one is a private event. I guess two more events: a private event on public property, and then a public event on private property. So, and I think we need to have those. And so I'll send you what I've drafted. But I thought I was clear when I was drafting, but now with Rosemary's questions and your answers, I'm probably even more confused because, and I think there's not a lot to decide. I mean, really, what to decide is who's allowed to do it, whether it's a private citizen or it needs to be a licensed caterer. I think we all agree at this table and on the Zoom that we want it to be a licensed person getting the application, right? So we want to write that into the requirement. Number two is the hours of it, right? And then number three is what they can serve. Can they serve alcohol? Can they serve wine, beer, or, if somebody wants to rent the Patton Estate for a wedding and they hired a caterer to do it,
Then they can have anything.
can they have anything they want or is it just beer and wine, right?
A caterer's license, 12C caterer's license.
If they don't have a 12C license.
Okay, then it's not a caterer license.
I'm told not every caterer is a 12C because I asked the caterer,
Yeah.
then they were a caterer, but they weren't a 12C caterer. So then,
That means they didn't have license, alcohol license.
right? So then we have to make. So they have to have a
Presumably, you
12C.
could have a caterer that doesn't serve alcohol, they just cater
Right, they
food
just
service
gotta have
only.
Food handling,
Yeah.
whatever, like a serve safe kind of a certification thing.
Yeah, it's just
But
for
you can
food.
hire professional bartenders that are
You can,
licensed
yes.
bartenders, but they don't have a 12C. So part of our regulation, we're going to say they have to be 12C.
We have a lot of,
Yeah, we have a lot of things to work
To your
through.
point, I
Yeah.
wonder if you have a
Right.
caterer that doesn't have a 12C license,
Right.
and they hire a bartender for their event.
Right.
How does that work?
they would have to have some sort
The
of a license.
bartender would be a
A one-day liquor
subcontractor, they'd probably have
license.
to have some type of a,
Right, you would have to have a one-day license issued by the town. So basically, I think to try to, and again, it's not an area that's really easily simplified, but I think the best way to describe it, or to try to simplify it, is that anytime there is the sale of alcohol, and a sale is presumed to occur when, in your typical transaction where somebody hands you, the cash or credit card to a bartender and they hand you a drink, or it would also include the situation where you pay like a cover charge for admission and it's an open bar, or you buy a ticket to an event
Right.
and alcohol service is included as part of your,
I think we're clear on the
ticketed
selling of
admission
it,
price.
Tom. I think our problem is we want to get to the free events. How do we handle,
Well,
how do we
right,
handle it? Because it says
and
right here,
so-
it says if
right,
it kind of makes it circular, because it says that they, like this other town's policy says, if the caterer doesn't have a 12G license, then they have to get a special one-day permit by the select board. So it's like
Right.
you could, so like
Well,
you
and
said,
that's
it's like we
exactly,
can decide,
I think
we
that's
have
the
all this
simplest
governing
way to
authority to give it to
describe
whoever
it,
we
is
want to
that
give it to.
if anything involves the sale or service of alcohol, then it requires a license. And if you have a caterer, then the caterer is, and the caterer is a licensed Section 12C caterer that's going to serve the alcohol, then that's, the alcohol service would be covered under the caterer's license. If the caterer does not have that and you need to hire professional bartenders to run the event, then you are going to need to get a one-day license. But there needs to be a license that would cover it. Where you wouldn't need a license is in the situation where you have a cookout in your backyard and you invite some friends and family over and you have a cooler
think
with
we all
beer and
understand.
wine.
I think we
and,
get that.
you know, people
Tom, what I
have
really
hot
need your
dogs
help
and
on
beer or
is,
whatever it is.
let's start.
But there's no actual service. If you are hosting, for example, a wedding reception or some other event like that, where you're paying either a caterer or you're paying for bartender service, then that's the guests, of course, are obviously not going to be, generally speaking, paying out of pocket, but the host paid for it, and in which case that's going to still involve the service of alcohol. It's only really if somebody's having a private party in their backyard with their friends and family or whatever it may be, where there's no admission charge. It's not it's not something that involves professional catering or service, then that's not going to be covered. That would not require any kind of a license. But
I can get out of that. So
anytime
Tom,
there's like a sale of alcohol, you have to have a license.
Yeah, no, Tom, I get that. I think our challenge right now is that so I started up here, it didn't work. I'm going to start now back. I'm going to go back to the weeds. What we need your help writing is a policy for a private event to serve alcohol at the Patton Estate. Let's get real specific, and then maybe from that we can start to make it more general. But we need you to help us write a policy that make it very clear on who, and our goal, like I said, is that person is licensed, insured,
And trained.
And all of the
Trained,
servers
right.
are tip certified.
Okay. Because that's our biggest problem right now. So let's start with our biggest issue, and then maybe we can make it. Because we haven't really seen other issues in town. Everything else, like what was done over the weekend, was easy because it was being sold, and so it was regulated by wine or beer or nonprofit profit. I mean, we and there's a list of who you buy it from, all that stuff. Once we get now to the private event at the Pat State, and if you can help, so I'm going to send you what I came up with. That based on what you're saying, it's almost not written. And this is what I said. This is a template I took from another town, but it sounds like based on what you're saying, it's too cumbersome. But let's talk about some things. Like, so one is, do we need, so let's just generally we talk about, do we need two, it sounds like we don't need two applications. It sounds like we can do this all on one piece of paper.
We can get one application, so they don't have to do two every time.
Right.
That seems kind of...
Right, so number one. Number two is, we want them to do a sketch, right? And number three is, do we want them to review it with the Hamilton Police prior to submitting? I think, is that,
I think, I don't see why not.
as long as it's not cumbersome or...
No, when you said a sketch, this is, as I understand, the policy that we're drafting is going to be limited to the Patton Homestead.
Well,
Is there?
the policy we're writing is going to be comprehensive,
Townwide.
but the part of the policy I want you to write right now is just for the Patton Homestead.
All right, got it. Okay, thank you. So just to maybe, hopefully not complicate things too much further, but we have drafted, and I have drafted liquor licensing regulations for a couple different communities over the years, and one of my colleagues just recently did one for another North Shore community. And it covers really kind of everything. It's probably 25 pages long, the policy, but it deals with basically everything that kind of comes up at the local level in the alcohol context. So it talks about the application. There's a section on one-day licenses. There's a section on kind of the range of penalties that would apply for any violations of any of the licensing rules and regulations, in that sort of thing. So I don't know. I can certainly, work with Joe if you'd like to try to come up with more
we're
comprehensive
5 pages or
regulations
less
overall
town.
for
We like
alcohol
to simplify
licensing in
things, not
town.
complicate
And then,
things, so.
we could include specifically, for example, the patent homestead and some of these other issues that
We
you're
want to,
addressing.
not that it's a simple issue, but we want to simplify the regulations, but.
So also, what we can do is just decide under what circumstances we would lease out the patent homestead. Instead
Right.
of preparing for every possible contingency,
Right.
we can set the boundaries, and
Right.
then we won't have to really scurry around like little rats trying to figure out how we should
Right,
do
we
this.
want to give people a very
So
specific
that-
set of guidelines,
exactly,
yes.
Exactly.
correct.
So
Yeah.
instead of we preparing for every scenario for every
Right.
Tom, Dick, and Harry who comes along, we can say these are the guidelines, these are the boundaries, these are the regulations, the town regulations, under which we will grant you the right to use
license, yeah,
patent
right.
homestead. So maybe we could do it that way.
That's what I'm asking them to do. I agree with
Yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
what I'm gonna do.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
do a very, this is how you get alcohol
Right.
served at Patton.
Exactly.
Then we can, and then very succinct, make it simple
Exactly.
for somebody, so there's no room for interpretation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who can have a
Yeah.
one-day license? Who
Yeah.
can use a
Yeah.
12C caterer license?
Exactly.
And then we don't have to, because, okay, if you're not within our regs, then no, you can't, and you'll have to figure out how to hold this event within our regs.
Exactly, right. No,
Okay,
right,
so-
I agree. Because
Right. Yeah.
these have a loophole, says
Because
if
I
you don't
think
have all this
the
stuff, then you go
second
get a
issue
one-day
that goes
license.
along
And it's
with
like, wait a
patent
second, then you can
homestead,
change
which, we
everything.
discussed, as you know,
why
is
was it
that
such a conundrum about
the
it?
town
But
has
anyhow,
a
Tom-
general bylaw that specifically provides that Board of Selectmen authorization is required to consume alcohol in a public place, including public ways, public parks, and other public property, which would include the patent homestead. So that's, I think, with this, where, certainly it would make sense for the board to come up with some sort of policy to say, if you want to have alcohol at the patent homestead, in light of this bylaw that we have on our books, these are the requirements that you're going to have to meet in order to be eligible for, to serve alcohol.
Right.
So that certainly makes sense.
Yep,
Yeah,
agreed.
so
Yes, Tom,
perfect.
that's exactly what we need.
Okay, good.
Now what's next? Sorry.
All right, so I think that's the big general ideas. I think, I just want to just make sure, the only other question I had in terms of just the checking the box, Tom, was that we talked about a liability insurance, but someone keeps mentioning alcohol liability. Is there a difference? Do we need to have alcohol liability or just liability insurance, and what do other towns do?
So I would recommend that you confer with the town's insurance advisor on that issue. I don't know specifically whether or not a general liability insurance policy would cover alcohol service. I know, for example, that in order for a caterer to get a 12C license, there are minimum insurance requirements that they're required to maintain before the ABCC will grant the license. So if it's an individual who is going to rent out Patent Homestead to have an event and they're going to have a professional bartender there, I would assume that the bartenders would be insured. However, you can certainly require, as part of the issuance of any license, that the individual, that's certainly the individual, but at least somebody would have insurance to cover any liability issues that may arise.
We have that covered. I just didn't know if we need the alcohol liability, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know that
Maybe
the
Joe
town
could,
would.
talk
I would
to-
say the town does not necessarily need it because the town is not involved in the
Right.
service of alcohol. The town owns the building. We're leasing or licensing it out to folks or to different entities for the purposes of hosting their events. But the town is not involved, nor should the town ever be involved in the actual service of the alcohol or running of the specific events. We're just providing the venue.
Right.
Maybe, Joe, you could check with the insurance provider and just double check where we are with policies, and if we need to beef anything up, or, what they're going to recommend.
Yeah, I could certainly check with the insurance and get their recommendation, but as Tom said, I'd prefer to put it on the people providing the alcohol service and have them cover us as an additional named insured, rather than us extend insurance to somebody else.
Right.
That should be part of the regulations you
Well, they
all-
might be able to give you
I think you're
some
missing the question. The
advice
question is-
too. They might be able to say, well, we've seen it done, this way through, a third party or whatever, but I don't know, I just feel like we should know what our insurance is
Right. Well, we
covering.
have
Yeah,
like a- we
my-
have a
my
general
question was-
liability for patent through Mia or Maya or whatever, right? And then
Okay,
whoever
okay.
is using it, we require them to carry a certain amount of insurance, and
Yeah.
it's on them if,
Right, so, yeah, so I guess my question maybe was misstated. My question was, does the person applying for the license have to get liability insurance? And do they also need to have I've never heard of liquor liability insurance. Someone mentioned it. So the question was,
In a few.
so the question is there such a thing?
Right.
And should we require that person to get an additional liquor liability, not just a liability? That was my question. It wasn't just the town get liquor liability. It was should the individual have that as
Some
well?
of the bylaws, or some of the different towns' policies that I read do specifically mention for liquor
I've
liability.
never heard of it before, so.
Yeah, so maybe it's just a higher level, maybe it's a broader scope, I don't know, but we certainly have a lot of questions, and it's good to take time to get this right.
So Joe, is there any events coming up that you're aware of that we need to
We have-
be prepared
we
for
we have some folks looking to try to rent the facility in October, or at the end of October, beginning of November, so I have.
So if you informally tell them that,
I don't know, I haven't met with them yet, so I don't
Yeah.
know if their event includes alcohol.
but if they do, just throw the old 12C license at them. That's a good starting point.
right.
Jamie wants you to know that his flight is boarding, so he's going to be having to leave the meeting.
Okay, I think that's good. Thank you, Jamie. All right, let's go to the, so we don't have to vote or anything.
Yeah.
We're going to try and, but I think it's good discussion. Thank you all for all your homework and your good questions, and Tom, thank you for your insight. And so let's take a step back and work on just the patent aspect of it, and then we'll try and wrap it up into one policy with one application, one piece of paper.
Okay, thank you. Do you need me to stick around for anything else, or
No,
are you
no.
all set?
We're good, thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you. And do you want me to plan on, I know I typically have attended the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom to review the warrant, so I can certainly put that on my calendar for October 4th if you'd like me to attend.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, all right, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
Thank you, Tom.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Guess flag policy next.
Flag policy?
Yeah, and Jamie would like to speak to it before he has to board his
All
flight.
right, Jamie, we're going to talk about the flag policy. I'll let you speak first in case your plane has to board, so go ahead and give us your notes.
Yeah, so I am, I have to get on my flight. Kind of no way around that.
So do you want to maybe table it?
Yeah, we're not gonna vote tonight anyways, just a discussion.
Why don't we
so,
table it?
So I think we have a discussion, and then we can discuss it again next time. And Jamie, if you want to send us your notes in writing, maybe we can review it before then, but sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I apologize for,
No, it's all right. We're not voting tonight anyways. This is a longer discussion, so.
all right.
Do you want to let Mr. Davis speak, though? He had,
Yeah, so do we table our flag discussion?
I wanted to have a few comments, and then,
you could take comments.
yeah, we take comments, but, yeah, go ahead and let, Joe, go ahead, whoever wants to speak from the,
Mr. Davis? John?
Yes, thank you. I just had a few questions and concerns to share. I'll try to be brief here, 5 minutes or less, about the guest flag policy. And those are questions relating to the general principle by which an organization would be included or excluded from showing a guest flag. And also some questions about the pragmatics and administration of it. And thirdly, an issue about jurisdiction relative to state and local municipalities. But as to the first point, as to whether or not there's a clear, non-arbitrary principle of selection here, to speak to that, I would suggest that one principle might be the recognition of the difference between a flagpole which is erected on government property, whether it's federal property, state property, or civic property, versus a flagpole erected on private property. And it seems that historically the purpose of a flagpole, for example, the flagpole in front of Town Hall, which is on public property, is for the purpose of displaying a flag which represents a governmental body, either the federal government, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, or the town of Hamilton. And so there's a distinction here between a public flagpole, which displays a symbol of a government duly elected authority with legal authority and jurisdiction over its citizens in a definite space, whether town, state, or the United States, that bears authority as well as symbolism. And so that public flagpole might be distinguished from a billboard, okay, which is on private property, in which various private groups certainly can exercise their First Amendment rights to advocate for their various humanitarian or otherwise causes. So on the one hand, I think just posting flags of private non-governmental organizations on a government property here sends a mixed message and confuses, I think, the authority of a duly elected representative governing body with a private advocacy organization. Now, so in other words, the flag of the United States does not represent simply Democrats or Republicans or red states or blue states or any particular private group, but presumably is a symbol of unity of all people who subscribe allegiance to that particular flag through a democratic process. Now, sort of the presenting issue here, I think, is surrounding human rights organizations. And of course, there are many human rights and advocacy groups that are advocating for their particular understanding of a human right. As a specific example, consider the cause of the Palestinian people relative to the modern state of Israel. Now, I personally favor a two-state solution, and I'm very sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. However, I recognize that in the town of Hamilton, there may be other citizens of the town who do not support a two-state solution. And I would not want to impose my particular human rights or political preference on them, I think, apart from their consent. So again, the distinction between a flagpole on a government property, originally designed to display the emblem of an authoritative government body versus a private billboard. So that's one thing. Now, just a few comments about the pragmatics of this. The question would be, well, who would determine what degree of community consensus might support a particular humanitarian cause, such as the Palestinian cause in a two-state solution? Would you have, certainly not a townwide election, but a poll? If so, who would run and analyze the poll? Would Joe DeMelowitz or a select board member be tasked with the task of actually gathering the data as to who supports or does not support a particular humanitarian cause? Another pragmatic issue here, you might say, involves the stewardship of the board's time. And I guess the question is, well, does the board really want to take up the additional task of debating particular humanitarian causes and guest flags here when you have, I think, probably more urgent and pressing matters before the board, such as the state of repair of the sidewalks on Railroad Avenue, or the state of the toilet in Patton Park, and other issues. So stewardship of time. And another pragmatic issue is in terms of optics and the town's perception of the board. Would there be a danger here that by weighing in on potentially controversial partisan humanitarian issues,
Bingo.
the board would be seen to be partisan and imposing its own political preferences on the rest of the town apart from any due process? So there are those pragmatic issues. And then finally, I think there's a jurisdictional issue, and here's the question. One hypothetical principle would be that, well, if the Commonwealth of Massachusetts approves a flag to be flown before the State House in Boston, is it then mandatory that all the towns in the Commonwealth also fly that flag? Or would the towns of the Commonwealth, including Hamilton, also reserve the right of local option to either display a human rights advocacy group flag or not? So I think those are some issues of jurisdiction, pragmatic administration, and principal selection that I think certainly should be considered in this matter. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Joe, you can turn on your speaker, sorry, the feedback. No, thank you for your comments. I think that's why we're here having these discussions. I think that when we talked about this in the spring, that was one of the options we talked about, was whether or not we should just limit this to any state or federal holiday flag that's already flying, that's already an approved state, or whether we should open it up. And we tended back to the Human Rights Coalition to come up with a policy, Human Rights Commission to come up with a policy that they would recommend for us to vote on, and that's what we're voting. So they came back with a policy that made it more open-ended, more general. And I think that, there's some good reasons why. I mean, grassroots efforts have to start somewhere. So if you can't start a grassroots effort at the federal level, you have to start at the local level. So if there's something appropriate at the local level that we think we should fly a flag for, and we have a policy that creates a apolitical environment, no, I don't think we should just say no to that. So, but I think we should go through a process and talk about it and vote and get a consensus. But once again, it's a democratic process. So we're all elected officials, and we've been elected by the citizens of Hamilton to make decisions. And if citizens don't like the decisions we make, then we don't get voted in next time. So that's kind of the process that we go through. So I don't think we're forcing our agenda on anybody. I think that we were voted to help form policy, and that that's our job to make the best decision we can based on policy. So, and that's what we're here to do today. Really get all the input from everybody, talk about it as a board, and hopefully implement a policy that we get a consensus on. So, and we're not going to vote anything today. So this is just discussion. And I know some other people want to speak. So, Joe, who else would like to speak? And then we'll talk about it as a board. I know probably Rosemary and Darcy.
Darcy's right in here.
I actually think that we should think back to our Human Rights Forum, where we had, I think the fellow's name was Bill. He was the facilitator for our Human Rights Forum that we had. And he actually said that in Dedham, where he lived, they actually went to town meeting on it, and they were able to come together and come to an agreement and a policy. And policy analysis is really important. We don't take policies, raw policies from advisory groups without doing policy analysis, because that's our job as elected officials. That's what we do. That's part of our due diligence. We go into an executive discussion. So we don't just take a policy and run with it. We're always going to analyze it.
Right.
We're always going to look to make it better, because you don't make policy for the people today, for the problems today. You make policy that has a life ahead of it, so it will serve everybody in the future. That's what good policy making is. Bad policy making is making snap decisions without doing the analysis and the discussions. And I hope that everybody that hears me understands what I'm talking about, because that's our job, doing the due diligence, making the policies that will have a lifespan going into the future, take us into the future. So we should consider, letting the people speak and vote. If the policymakers on the board, the executive board, can't make these decisions unanimously, that tells me that it needs to go to the people, directly to the people. And that's just my view.
Okay. Who else is on the,
Anna and Nancy.
Nancy?
Nancy.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted, thank you for speaking, Mr. Davis. I do want to point out that we do fly the MIA flag with government flags. So there is a precedent for doing that. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. And also the two flag raising events that were held in town this summer were very well attended. So there is definitely a need for some policy that would allow this to happen. It's very important. I also have a correction to the flag policy that I'd like to bring up. This was brought to my attention in paragraph 4, the size of the flag. This is a minor thing because we're talking about much bigger issues, but I do want to indicate that the flag size, the minimum size that I had listed was 3x6, and it actually should be 3x5, which is a much more standard size flag. We're happy to have done this work for the board, and it is a document that you will own. But I do hope that you'll keep the wishes of the community in mind. And if you didn't attend the events that happened this summer, I believe there's some photos online that you could see how many people were attending and how important it was to those people in the community that did attend. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Ann?
Yeah.
Anna?
Bill, thank you, Select Board, for a chance to speak. So I wanted to raise a couple points based on your last conversation, and just as sort of a point of public information, it would be so helpful if somehow or other the current draft of the policies that are under discussion are more available as part of the packet somehow. So my comments are only based on your conversation last time about it. So if there's something that's erroneous, it's because the public doesn't really have access to the draft policy. But a couple points I wanted to raise. One was the one that Nancy just brought up, that 3x5 is a much more standard size. At the last meeting, you talked about sort of limiting the number of requests and the duration of requests, which I think is reasonable. So I think having some sort of, minimum, I think you were between 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, or something that allowed for some level of flexibility, but not for the board to spend all of its time on flag requests, which is also reasonable. The only thing I'd want to sort of offer on those two comments is that the number of requests could potentially stifle things that happen that are unexpected. And for example, just in Beverly a couple of weeks ago, the town flew a No Place for Hate flag. And it was in response to a public meeting at the school committee. And very quickly, the town put that flag up on their flagpole. And so I feel like the policy is good, but I think it should have some sort of clause for deviation if circumstances arise. And that was a very quick decision that was made. And the city councilors and the mayor and everyone was in support of that. So I think that needs to be built into that. In terms of duration, I just want to point out that some standard requests that are very typical for governmental bodies, like Pride Month, for example, the month of June is definitely longer than a week. And customarily, those flags are flown for the entire month. So again, I think that it's fine to have sort of a minimum standard, but I think that the policy has to recognize that a week may not be in keeping with practice for certain requests. And then the last 2 points I sort of wanted to address are a little more philosophical. One of them is that, the precedent of government speech has been well established. So I think on this point, it's important to recognize that when the government speaks, it is doing so on behalf of the people. And the appropriate place for many of these flags is town hall. We're fortunate here that we have potentially 2 locations, but in most municipalities, you don't actually have a secondary flagpole, right? We're lucky that we have Patton Park, but in most places that's not an option. And so very purposely, when these flags are flown, it is at the seat of government. And that's an important philosophical point, because when the government is speaking, the government should be speaking at the place where the government meets and is most important to the seat of government. And that would be town hall or the mayor's office or whatever that is in whatever municipality. So I actually sort of think town hall is really important here. And then lastly, I wanted to speak sort of to the unanimous vote question. I was trying to look into this, and maybe this is a question for town council. I can't think of any other decision that's made at any level of government, including federal, state, where a unanimous vote is the threshold. You know, even Senate confirmations are not unanimous. There are certain votes that go to a supermajority, which I do think was a discussion about trying to get a little more buy-in. And I think locally, there are some ballot measures that are like that. I know the school committee votes on our budget has to come out as a supermajority. So I think there's some precedent for a supermajority, but I think there's no precedent at all for requiring a unanimous vote, a vote on anything. And I think
That's funny because, you know,
excuse me, I'm still speaking.
when you have,
Excuse me, I'm still speaking.
a discussion on, an executive discussion, actually.
Darcy, let her finish,
So
please.
I'm going to take precedence at this point.
Excuse-
When you have
Mr. Chair, I was
a policy
Darcy,
discussion on
how come
an
I can't?
executive level, you
you
want
mute Darcy,
to,
Mr. Olson, no other public speaker was interrupted by members
I
of
know,
the
I'm
board.
trying to, somebody can't, for some reason you can't hear me, but Darcy, can you please let her finish, please, and then we can have a discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. What I was saying is that I can understand a precedent for a supermajority in some narrow uses. I do not think there's any sort of precedent for a unanimous decision. I think that's something that would be difficult to surpass. And I think logically doesn't really make sense because, as Mr. Olson was saying, the select board is elected through a democratic process to make decisions. And you take votes on things of significance all the time with a 3-2 vote, a 4-1 vote. That's part of the process. So I think to establish a unanimous threshold doesn't actually, to me, doesn't seem like it has legal precedent, and I'm not sure is in keeping with what the board is itself is elected to do.
well, I
so
think
that part,
at this point, Bill, I think when you let people go on too long and they keep repeating themselves, I just want to make a point. In the human rights world, if you have a 4-1 vote and it's 4 men against 1 woman, or you have 4 white people against 1 black person, in the human rights arena, you want to actually, even though the majority does rule, you also want to prevent the tyranny of the minority. So it's not black and white. It does have a gray scale.
Excuse me,
So I
Ms.
just
Dell,
wanna say-
no one is advocating for the tyranny of the minority. I'm simply saying that
nobody
we're
is.
deferring.
But all I'm saying is that when you make
Mr. Olson, may I finish my comments, please?
Well, you've had quite a bit of time.
Yeah, so did Mr. Davis.
Darcy, if I can just get point, Darcy, just point of order here.
Like
Yeah,
people usually
Darcy.
don't get unlimited time.
Darcy, the people aren't hearing me. Well, just point over here. Andy, you can have 30 more seconds to wrap it up, okay?
Okay, thank you. So these are some topics I'd like to have for consideration in the next draft of the policy. And I think it's crucially important that the board exercises the leadership the town has given it. And I think at this point to deviate against flags that are being flown, have been flown before, or are flown by state and federal governments would send a really terrible message to the community that those issues are not of significant importance for flags to be flown at town hall. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
So Bill, let me just finish up. When you have a board, a 5-member board, and you're talking about things like flag flying and human rights issues, if you don't get a unanimous decision, you've got a minority group that is not being heard. My idea is if we can't come together in a unanimous way, if we can't all agree, then it should go to town meeting and let the people speak, because that is their right. This is a direct democracy. We can't usurp the people's power. That's where they get their power, is in their vote. So if we 5 can't come together in a unanimous way, then it needs to go to the people. That's how it works.
Well, it's not actually how it works. That's your opinion, Darcy. It's not how it works. How it works is a democracy. So, and I agree. I've thought about this a lot too, and I agree that nothing is unanimous. It's not how it works. It's not how a real world. So it's really, we have a decision of
That's the point. Maybe my
supermajority or
point
majority.
is it should go to town meeting, and
It doesn't need to go to town.
have
It could.
the people vote.
It could. It could go to town meeting. It doesn't have to go to town meeting. It could go to. We could decide it goes to town meeting. It doesn't have to go to town meeting.
It could be a
That's the point.
citizen's petition, is what I'm saying.
It
And
could be.
put
It
on
doesn't have to
warrant,
be, though.
And there could be, the process that we go through.
Right. Every policy we do here at a meeting, Darcy, could go to town meeting, but we choose not to. We choose to set policy here. So I agree with you. We could decide here, the 5 of us could decide that, hey, this is
Or
important
a
enough.
citizen could.
Yeah.
A citizen could decide to bring it to town meeting.
once again, it would be advisory. So it wouldn't be, because it would be an advisory thing. But we're not going to vote tonight, but I do want to get the comments. So I think what I'm looking for is constructive, I'm looking for constructive comments on what we need to add or change, and less general sort of comments, but more specific comments. So if people don't have time to review it, then maybe today's not the right day to add that comments. And I also do, in terms of just commenting on Anna, just the comments that you make, I appreciate your comments. I think what I asked you to do in the future, making comments, is that was our first discussion, and it was a draft. You make those discussions as though those are things we decided on. We didn't decide on anything. So those were just discussion points. So just make it clear when you're talking to the community, for anybody listening to you, I just want people to know that these weren't things that we decided on. These are just things we threw a lot of ideas out there the first time.
Yep.
And they were good ideas, bad idees, somewhere in the middle. So I just want to make sure it's clear. None of those things none of the things you mentioned were decided upon. They were just thrown out there as ideas. So, anyway, so Darcy, what other okay, so what I'm getting from you is that you have a majority vote or a town meeting vote. What other things?
That's what happened in Dedham. The facilitator was surprised that we actually didn't go to town meeting on this, because it's unusual. Usually that would be where the people speak. And so I would encourage people to talk about it and maybe come up with a petition that we can put on the warrant and get everybody involved. So that's an option. That's how we can make policy too.
Right, but I'm saying that might be a good idea, but my point is that we still need to write a policy that we would then take
We would
to town
need to
meeting and
analyze.
have
We would
them vote
write
on
and
it.
analyze as we go along.
So I'm not against that policy going in front of town meeting to vote on it, but we still need to come up with a policy that they vote on.
Right.
We can't form a policy at town meeting.
No, we can't. Right, we can't form a policy. We can have somebody can come and make an amendment to it, but we have to have a sort of a policy. So
I agree.
yeah. The things that I have comments. Sean, who wants to go next?
I'll defer to Rosie because she had some comments.
Okay, go ahead.
So, one can see that this is a very hot button issue, since we are all getting a little hot under the collar about this now. Honestly, I don't have a preference in my heart of hearts. I don't have a preference for which flag we put up. What I do object to is under this purpose saying the Board of Selectmen will refuse an application to raise a flag that has the potential to negatively reflect on the town's image. Well, I think that's an outrageous statement. Who are we to decide what's going to reflect negatively on the town's image? I have a problem with that, and I'll go back to my thoughts that we are the United States of America, and either my feeling is we're all equal, and either we raise every legal flag with no caveats here saying that we can refuse any flag for any reason. I don't think that's a correct statement. Who's to say whose flag should be raised and whose flag shouldn't? So if we are going to have a policy, I feel absolutely committed to the fact that if anybody comes to us and says, I would like my flag raised, and these are the reasons why, we don't have the right, because maybe we don't have the right, I don't feel morally we would have the right to refuse it, because somebody says, well, there are 3 people on this street that don't like it, and there are 12 people in this committee who won't like it. Either we do it for everybody, or we keep the American flag, which is my strong preference. I feel already this is causing some tension within this room, and I think any policy that's raising tension really needs to be evaluated for its legitimacy.
Peter's gonna die. Okay.
Lose the Zoom.
We got a low battery, then we're gonna lose the Zoom. Uh-oh.
All that spiel
I think
for
that's
nothing?
a sign, Rosie.
Can you log in? Can I make you?
Yeah,
Can you log
yeah,
in? I
yeah.
can make you
Yeah,
log
give me
in.
a
I'll make you
second
a host.
What
and
is
you can
that?
keep it going.
What is that, a
We'll
sign
take
in?
a brief,
No.
just that Joe's got a low battery.
I
He
got a low
won't use our
battery in the
Zoom.
computer.
Hold on,
Wait.
everybody hold on a second here.
Everybody hold on, technical difficulties here. We'll see if we can transfer the host to
Send me the
Bill and
Zoom.
he
I don't
For
can.
some
mean,
reason, it's not on
was
my
I
calendar.
lying? I just,
No, you're okay.
I mean, I just feel.
Yeah, I hear you, Rosie. It's hard, it's going to be
Yeah,
really,
I got
really
it
hard to
right
say
here. I
no
got it
to a
right here.
flag
I
that
got an agenda.
we may not politically agree with. I mean, but the Proud Boys, does Anna really want to see the Proud Boys flag flying? Do you?
No.
I wish you'd answer, because when you make a policy, this is what I'm saying. You critique it, you analyze it, you look for it in the future. So, I mean, I didn't want to have to come out and say that, but that's pretty much what we're talking about.
I'm trying to get in.
I mean, I don't want to see, anti-Semitism flags. I don't want to see anti-women flag. But how can you say yes to one and no to the other?
It's not, I don't have enough battery to admit you. It won't let me do anything right now.
On the phone.
If I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak at this time, but just having drafted the document, the statement, I understand what you're saying, Rosie, but that statement is that that this is government speech. It reflects what the community would like to see. And so you have the authority, and this has been,
Do you have an iPhone?
this has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. Okay, the city of Boston had a case where a religious group wanted to fly a flag. They didn't want to have a religious flag flown in the plaza. It was they were sued, and it was decided that they have the power to fly the flags that they want to. It's not a free speech issue. You have the right to decide, and we have elected you, so you have the power to reason this out. You're all very intelligent people, so I'm not really I'm not clear about what the issue is here. It's the law. So if you don't like that strong language, that language had been originally suggested by Chief Stevens, just because we had pulled that language from a Canadian flag policy that flows. All of this stuff can be edited, but you do need to keep in mind that you're responsible for this. It's government speech, and I'll let you talk now. But if you have any questions about
Well, what if someone said, okay, I have a Q flag that I
Darcy?
can put up?
Can you guys hear
That
me for a
would
second?
be
Sorry,
up to you to
we're having a
decide. I'm not
technical
gonna-
issue here
I'm
where
not
we're going to
gonna-
lose
But
our
I'm saying it's going to
Darcy.
be I mean,
Well,
How come
no,
people
I
can't hear
mean,
me?
nothing else is. Then every single one of your votes should be unanimous.
Hit
no,
pause.
that's not
if you
true.
think
I'm
about
talking about the human rights arena.
Well, all of
Now see
Where-
what I mean.
where you
every
want-
decision that you make on behalf of us, which is why we elected
right.
you.
That's
Okay,
right.
So you need to
But
understand that
we
this
work
is just
for everybody. We work for
Ex-
everybody. So
well-
if somebody wants to put up a Q flag or a MAGA flag, we work for everybody. How can I say yes to one and no to the? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
I don't understand, but I'm not going to discuss. I want to free you up to have the discussion that you need to have here. But I just wanted to give you the background on government speech. It's different than free speech. You are representing us. You're making the decisions.
That's why we have to be careful.
We've
That's why
elected
we
you
have
to
be
do
careful.
this. Okay, this is part of your job, though. And also we have a democratic society. And so majority or supermajority seems to be the way to go. But I really do want to, I'm sorry if I interrupted, but if you have any questions about how the policies develop and the origins of any sections or paragraph, please let me know. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you,
I
Nancy.
think the reality is this is our policy, and we wanted to make it as objective and inclusive as possible. And so that's my argument. That's my argument that it seems like a simple argument to me. We fly every flag of a citizen in this town who requests that we do it, as long as it's not illegal. Either that or we fly the American flag. Now, I think anything other than that can be construed as somewhat biased, somewhat preferential, and I don't want to be seen as that, because we do represent all of the people in this town, and some people are more vocal than others, but everybody has an opinion. Granted, a lot of people won't care what flag is flown. I personally don't care as long as everybody has an equal chance. That's my opinion.
Okay. Sean, I'll let you follow
I don't know how I
her up.
follow all of that.
Come on, you can do it.
Give Sean, give you 3 minutes that nobody can interrupt you, so why don't you get it all out there?
I won't interrupt you.
I'm fairly okay with the policy. I think it just needs a little bit of refinement, and it's for me, it's the duration and kind of where those exceptions come in. As Anna mentioned before, it's Pride Month, and a lot of our federal buildings and state buildings fly the flag for the whole month, and we kind of, I think we said a week or 7-10 days,
Right.
something like that. So we have to write something in there, either some exceptions to the rule, or like, as I previously kind of commented on other policies, we put a little bit, it's up to the selectmen's discretion on timing, but there's kind of a general.
Right, 7
time
days
frame.
or
7 days are up to the discretion of the Board of Selectmen, that kind of a thing, right? When you have instances like that, and I think, if we're talking about the American flag and the POW-MIA flag, I think that has to be kind of baked into this policy a little bit too. Even though we fly that flag all the time, it should be included in this policy because it's not a government flag. And what other entities, if there is anything with a policy with that, I know we fly it all the time, but, if someone protests that flag and wants theirs up instead of it, what's our kind of policy with that? And then I think we need to kind of narrow down the amount of applications. We kind of said it was, do we say 30 or something like that a year? I can't remember what we had talked about
30, no.
before. What was it? So was it 2 or 30 total or something? I can't remember what it was.
I was trying not to interrupt you. Can I?
Go ahead, no. It was 2 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's not
yeah, there's,
Then we had talked
Right.
about whether it was an entity that was like the Human Rights
Right.
Committee or another committee that probably would bring most of the applications to us. We don't have too many private citizens applying at the moment. We've only had a
Right.
few. But kind of what's the difference in the policy between those two things? Or do we make it kind of a blanket thing for both groups, and then it's, again, up to our discretion?
yeah, I mean, so if I can comment on that. So I'm not getting into the philosophical thing right now. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to have a policy. Let's talk about, right now, I'm just going to focus on the numbers, the data, right? We can go back to philosophically if we think we should have one or not, or what flags we should fly. But if we're just going to go to the facts, right, duration and frequency, right? I agree it should be, what I wrote down here, my notes were, individual citizen cannot make more than 3 requests per year.
Okay.
But town-affiliated boards and committees have unlimited because they're a town-affiliated board and committee. So of course they have unlimited because their job is or they work for the town. They're a town-affiliated board and committee. They're not a private town and committee. They're board-affiliated town and committee. And they're not going to make unlimited. But the fact is we're not going to limit our own towns and boards. Right.
The board is going to make 100 requests a
Yeah.
year.
Right.
So, I mean, that would be.
And in a private citizen, I think in terms of what people are talking about, in terms of consensus, I think it should have consensus. I don't think it should be any citizen. That's not how we work here. It's a democracy. So if you're a citizen, you want to make a request to fly a flag, you got to get 25 signatures. Just make it be like almost like a almost maybe like a
Petition kind of
citizen's petition. You get 20, then you have some consensus from your citizens that it's actually something that the community wants to fly.
And you're saying that anybody who wanted to have a flag flown would be required to
Get
get 25?
Yeah.
That's a nice suggestion.
That way you're kind of showing some kind of
Okay.
constituency, right?
Yeah. But you can make it.
I'll ultimately have to approve it, but at least.
You have to prove it.
Well, okay, but then we go back to if we have 25 people who are saying they want this, why wouldn't we?
Well, because we don't want it.
I mean,
But you're not the whole
We are, though.
town.
That's
That's
right.
exactly
That's our
the
job.
I'm an
point.
elected official, I'm
it's our
a
job. Yeah,
representative
it's our
of.
job.
But
It's
then,
unfortunately our
My role
job,
as a
and I'm not afraid to do my job.
yeah.
And if
You
people
know,
like me do my
Our
job,
job is to
yeah.
make hard decisions.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
we're elected.
And it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Well,
Putting people in uncomfortable situations is okay.
sometimes you have to really look at a situation objectively, and yeah, that is a hard decision. It's not easy to sit here in the face of pressure to do otherwise when I strongly suggest that we need to be equal in our flag policy. It's as simple as that. It doesn't seem like that should have to cause such a huge ruckus. Really, I find it offensive that we are geared toward maybe pushing a particular set of flags without considering everybody. We just lost our...
You're the host, so you should have it up.
I don't know what's happened.
You're the host.
I know, it just died on me. Oh, I'm still here.
You're there.
No, I'm still here. I'm just not connected to the thing. Give me the,
Oh.
sorry.
Got it.
Oh, pause 1 second if you can hear us.
How do you think this went on that?
I think we just lost the feed to
Sorry.
Bill's
Hey, Bill.
computer, so,
Folks, stay with us for 1 second.
No, I don't have
the dongle.
I don't have the dongle on me.
Oh, no.
I don't know what that term.
Sorry, we can all,
I don't have one.
Oh,
can all
are they
look.
still there?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
still
Still
there.
there.
We
We
can't
just
see them
can't
up
see
there.
them.
We can't
Oh,
see them up there.
okay.
They can see
Well,
all
this
of
is an
us.
intimate.
Yeah, my husband confirmed that he can see everything.
Okay, yeah, we lost our feed. You guys can still see us,
Yep.
but we couldn't
You
see
can-
it
you can
on
hear
our-
us?
on our screen.
Yep, we can hear
Oh,
you.
that's
We'll
good.
just stare
We
at
can
Bill's
see you.
computer, so.
Yeah.
all right, so we're good. We can still keep going here.
So I hope everybody heard my comments that I honestly, I think before we get into the weeds about this, we should discuss the merits of a policy and what we want to allow. That seems to me the 20,000-foot view that we should come to a consensus.
Right, so
on.
I'll go back to the human rights group that suggested, because, and once again, to get to their opinion, because we had gone back and said, hey, if we kept this thing simple and just said, if it's a federal or state recognized holiday, we'll fly just those flags. You came back with a much more general policy, and I just wanted, and I know you talked about it last time, but just to repeat yourself about where this policy was modeled after and where it's worked successfully.
You have to turn
You're
up the
asking
volume on
Nancy,
your- You
right?
have to turn up your volume on your speaker.
I can't hear from there.
I don't know.
We heard everybody. We heard Darcy.
I can hear you. I can hear it from the TV upstairs, so I think.
Yeah, sorry, so,
Good.
so who?
Can you hear us?
So Nancy?
Right. Okay. So really, from all the research that I did, almost all of the towns are still developing a policy.
Yeah.
We're all in the same place.
Yep.
There are a couple of towns. Amherst has a policy, but everybody is still working through it. Boston has one. But you can, and I'd be happy to share some of those policies with you if you'd like me to send them to you. But the smaller towns are all working through it, and they realize that there is a real need, and this is something that their citizens want. So it's not just an issue that Hamilton is dealing with.
Okay.
There are towns that have a general policy and that I can't remember the name of the few towns that I looked at right this moment, but I can tell you that their flag raising policy, their guest policy, didn't have any limitations. And so that's the point that I'm trying to make. And nobody may ever want any flag to be risen. I just want the principle to be upheld.
So the reason the policy was written in this way, well, there were two reasons. One was to protect the town, to protect the town, and so that everyone knows that they have the final say and you have the final say. The second reason for the policy was to make it very clear what the rights and responsibilities of the guest flag requester, what they make. So these are the two main elements, and I guess it's up to you all to hammer out the rest of the details. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you will consider, the interest of town residents. It was both events were just well attended, and I think we could have more opportunity to serve the rest of the town too. But don't be afraid to use your power and your authority here.
I don't think we are. I think what it is that policy analysis takes time and it's work, and it has to be written for the ages. It can't be just for here and now. And, where it's so contentious, it might be best that what they did in Dedham, they took it to town meeting and they hashed it all out and they worked it out together, the whole town. And that might be where we need to go. Because everybody can put a flagpole, you know, they can fly whatever flags they want on their own properties, and businesses, don't forget businesses. They can also fly, you know, the flags that speak to them. But when you have such a highly charged political atmosphere, and you might have folks that want to fly the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, I just have a feeling that how are you going to say no to some and yes to others, and be correct? It's unprincipled, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's unprincipled to do that. So if we can't create guardrails, guidelines, whatever, then we need to take it to the people and let them decide, because it's their town and this is a direct democracy. We don't represent, we literally don't represent, this is not a representative democracy here. Every person speaks for themselves when they come to town meeting. They're their own legislators. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, if the five of us can't come to an agreement, that's a signal that we need to take it to the people.
Yeah, I mean, Darcy, our job is to come up with policy, and it doesn't have to be an agreement. We have to come up with a majority of the board. So.
Oh, I understand that completely.
So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to. So what I recommend to you is, if you can suggest to me.
Everybody, and town meeting is where the really important stuff gets done. That's.
Yeah, but policy doesn't get written at town meeting, Darcy. We don't write policy there.
Like that. You know, what I'm saying is, we have to consider that as an option.
Yeah, but Darcy, we don't write policy at town meeting. We present policy to vote on. So what I'm just
what I'm saying is, let them vote on the policy, let them amend the policy, let them discuss the policy.
No, we need to come up with a baseline. So I'm not saying I'm against that, but I need your help recommending language. So I'm going to send you the Word version again today or tomorrow, and if we can all look at it and send me recommendations of what you want to see in it, and I will put it together so we can vote on it next time as a select board, and then we can decide how we go from there. But we need specific recommendations so we can move forward.
So did we decide?
And Nancy, you're going to be available to touch base with at some point?
Oh, sure. Anybody can email me. I'm happy to speak with anyone about it. Yeah. Okay.
So my question is, we talked about having unanimous agreement among the board, and now you just said majority. So tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, last time I asked the question, I said, should it be unanimous or should it be a supermajority or should it be a majority? I don't think we ever decided. Okay. I'm in favor now of thinking about it, that my opinion now is a supermajority makes the most sense.
So 4 out of 5.
4 to 1. So, but I think the petition was my compromise, sort of the 25 signature petition, sort of bridges the gap of an individual. It's not really just an individual. It's a group of 25 people, right?
Yeah. Well, what it's saying is that not just that one person believes in this issue or feels strongly about it, that there are others. I like that idea very much, Bill.
All right, so let's think about, take our homework, think about it. And once again, I agree with Darcy. This is not something we're going to vote on immediately. We don't need to rush this, nor should we rush this. So and I think it's important. I think it's, it's a good use of our time, because it's a good model on how we can set policy, for whether it's this or something else in the future, the way we talk about it, the way we debate it, the way we come up with ideas. Yeah. And so I think we should take our time and keep, but I don't want to lose momentum. I want to keep talking about it till we get to a certain point. So.
And maybe we can also look at other towns as they are developing it in real time.
Agreed, yeah.
Right, that's kind of my question. Nancy, are you still there?
She is.
So Nancy, I want to ask you one question kind of to Darcy's point there. You had mentioned earlier that a lot of towns kind of are evolving this as we are in real time. When you were kind of getting information from other entities, were you looking at written policies, or did you actually kind of talk to some people and ask them what they were doing, and they explained to you that they were kind of underway of formulating some type of policy?
I did connect with some people, both people in town government and also people in their communities that were working on flag policies. Unfortunately, I'm a senior citizen, so that feels like a long time ago that I did that, but I'm happy to share. I have a spreadsheet that I made that has information on the people I spoke with and what their policies look like, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who would like that.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting, Nancy. This is Rosie. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, if maybe
Okay,
you could
great.
send it to Joe or Bill and they could share it with the board, because I'm
Sure.
kind of curious on which policies you looked at, and you know, I'm sure you did a great job kind of combining stuff to make it fit for us, but I'm just kind of curious too of what other towns maybe have made progress since maybe you've talked to them, and I could reach out to them as well.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So I just have one more comment here. So I'm trying to make the point here that I want to be egalitarian and that everybody's opinion matters. And when I say that, I'm not hearing anything from anybody. So do I understand that to mean that it's not important that we consider everybody's viewpoint? I don't understand.
So Rosie, to comment on that, what I did do is I made a comment on the draft flag policy where in the first sentence they wrote, the Board of Selectmen will refuse an application to raise a flag that has the potential to negatively reflect on the town's image. That's essentially, I also have an issue with that. I think we should vote on every application that comes in front of us.
Right.
We can't refuse anything, we can vote on it, right? So I changed that, I agree with you, we can't refuse it, but we can vote on it.
I agree with that. I don't
Right.
think we should outright refuse it. I think we have to review every one of them.
Review everyone and vote on every one of them.
Then we can
Yeah, right.
negate it or accept
Right, so I
it,
agree with you
whatever.
that we shouldn't, I agree with you, I read that sentence, I don't like that sentence either. We should not refuse it, we should vote on it. And if it gets approved, it gets approved, if it gets denied, it gets denied, but it goes through the process.
Right.
We don't short circuit the process.
Right.
And each of the decisions would be by a
4-1, yeah.
supermajority.
Super.
You're winning me over a little bit, just a little bit. But it is hard to have these discussions because for whatever reasons, I'm sort of everybody needs to have a voice. It's not just the most, popular movement at the moment, whatever that may be. Today's movement, 5 years from now movement. I really believe that everybody deserves to have a voice, and that's why it's so important to me.
And what I say, and I agree with you, when I say to that is that we go to town meetings sometimes and we don't get things approved the first time, right? So maybe someone comes in front of us and it doesn't get approved the first time, but maybe they come back again a month later and says, no, I didn't present it too well, I didn't show you what I really meant, right? So maybe some things just take time. Maybe they come back again and do another application. So what I'm saying is I'm okay with not everybody getting approved the first time, and maybe there's a good reason, maybe there's not, but
Well, it's
but
policy
part of the
analysis that we are tasked with, and that takes time and it takes effort. And in the end, we always come up with a better product. It's the policy analysis. You just don't take a raw, unedited document and run with it. You work it. You work it for the ages. You work it for the future.
Right.
Because we're not going to be here. We are not
Right.
going to be sitting in these seats in 10 years or 5 years, whatever. So we make policy for everybody who might be sitting in these seats and who will be moving here and living here.
Okay. All right, we have 2 more items on the agenda, so if anybody, I'll give everybody one last second to make any comments and we'll move on. Darcy or anybody else have any other comments? But I think this is a good conversation. I think it's okay to be uncomfortable as long as
Yeah.
we're polite and
Right, of course.
and professional to each other, but I think it's okay to be uncomfortable with
Yeah.
situations because that's how we get to the other side, so.
And I think we shouldn't make a plan to necessarily vote on it next time either. We should just
Correct.
keep talking about
talking
it
about it,
until we come to a
Get more
consensus.
Yes,
input.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
That's.
Yeah, and I'm not in a hurry to resolve it, but I'm in a hurry to keep discussing it and keep shaping it so that we don't lose focus.
Right.
All right, so we have 2 other things. Next on the agenda is,
Recap.
no, we're going to skip that for now and have Robin, who's been very
Yep.
patient.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And so, Robin, thank you. I watched both of your videos on YouTube, and I think we should share those with people, but you have some good recommendations. I want to keep this conversation positive. I think that everyone in town is doing their best to make the town beautiful, but I think you have some good suggestions on how to keep that improvement going and make it a little bit better. So I will give you the floor for 3 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about.
And Mr. Chair, may I just interrupt? I'm sorry, Robin,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to say a thank you to Robin and all the volunteers that went down. I had gone down a couple of times and saw Robin out there, and then I went back another time, and Robin had a whole crew of folks down there with her. And she had brought some kind of refreshments for everybody, and it was well thought out, and there was a lot of people really kind of showing that they care about town and the appearance of it, and so I really appreciate that. I just wanted to say that before we got started, Robin. Thank you.
Bravo, Robin.
I know Darcy spent some time with you as
You're doing it all
well.
over again tomorrow, aren't you?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sean. Let's see. All right, let me see. So I sent to all of you selectmen a document and a very short YouTube presentation with pictures of some low-hanging fruit that I thought we could try and attack. And my strategy, Jack and I got started weeding the post office with the permission of the postmaster. And we went down there on 3 occasions and we just pulled all the weeds at the post office. And we had so much fun. We thought, well, let's see if other folks would like to join us. So we're meeting Tuesday. We gave birth to a group called Friends of Downtown Hamilton. And we weeded much of Railroad Avenue, and then the DPW went Friday morning and did in front of Talbot's and a bunch of stuff on 1A. But then I started thinking, what are some other small projects that maybe, I think they're beyond volunteers, but I think the DPW could do them, or parks people. So let me just quickly go through it. And they're in this thing that I emailed all of you, but what about trimming the low-hanging branches that are over the sidewalk in front of the People's Bank? You walk down the sidewalk and you have to push your way through the bushes, through the branches. So that's safety and it's aesthetics. The second thing, the split rail fence around the parking lot and the playground at Patton Park has 6 sections where the top rail is missing. The rails are lying on the ground there. Jack and I tried to pick them up and put them in, but it was beyond our strength. But I think the DPW muscle man could do that very quickly, and that would look very much nicer, and it would be a safety feature to help corral the kids. So I think in terms of safety, that's an important thing. Third thing, the town hall is a beautiful, beautiful building. Am I still here?
Yes, you are.
Good. But it's dark at night, and I don't know why. I don't know why we don't have a nice spotlight on that beautiful building, especially with LED lighting being quite reasonable. So I wonder if that can be addressed. We checked it out, and there was one non-working spotlight on the flag, and then what looked like more of a floodlight that could maybe be turned on the building, but it was going up at the flag. Okay, so fourth thing, this has to do with aesthetics, but also respect for our veterans. The memorial in front of the town hall, where the writing on, and I recognized somebody my age who served in Vietnam, his name is all covered with black growth. Okay, so I've been told that there's a correct way to clean granite, and it's not bleach. But somebody knowledgeable could clean that up, and I think that really should be done. Okay, and then a fifth thing, this I think is safety and liability. The picture going on Asbury Street with town on your back, Patton Park on your right, and right before you cross the railroad tracks, there is a railroad crossing sign, and it is tilted, and the corner of the sign is right at least for Jack, eye level. That's a safety thing. We have a town bylaw that says that signs need to be 12 feet up. It's in the town bylaws, the sign bylaws. So I think that, again, if somebody were to hit themselves, poke their eye or something like that, I think that could easily be addressed, straighten up the sign, put an extender on it, and be done with it. Again, the things I'm listing here are pretty quick fixes. Now, this one's a little bit harder, but for a tree person, not at all. There is a dead tree that's been hanging over the People's United Bank for quite a long time. One branch in the last big storm fell on the bank. The DPW came and took the branch away. And I've talked twice with the clerks in there and the tellers in there, and they told me that the DPW came and got the branch. I would just suggest that if that indeed is town property, let's just cut the tree down and be done with it. But do you notice that tree when you drive?
I will now.
Okay. I think we're so used to seeing some of these things.
Yeah.
And I just am starting to see stuff like weeds and pickets that are missing and stuff that we can do to fix the town up a little bit.
Thank you,
Okay.
Robin. Those are good things that we should think about, and I think, I mean, you said Ted, I know Ted's on the call here, but
Yeah, Ted Ackwick was on the call because he was interested in trying to revive maybe the Patton Park group.
the Friends of Patton Park.
I'm here.
Park group, and,
That'd be great.
So, I hadn't seen this list until today, so I'll discuss it. The first four things strike me as things that we can do in-house with DPW. I need to look into numbers 5 and 6, particularly the railroad crossing sign. I'm not sure that's our sign. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those
what
signs
we
have to abide by our
over.
bylaws, but we'll find out.
And the DPW director is the tree warden in town, so he'd have to assess the tree and determine if it's ours or not. We wouldn't be able to do anything with it if it's not ours. We can only take a tree
Okay,
if it's ours.
so maybe it belongs to the bank, to that condominium association of 3 businesses.
Yeah, we'll find out, Robin.
Maybe that could be
find out.
Yeah, we'll find
clarified.
out.
I'll talk to Tim about all of these tomorrow, and we'll get to the bottom of it. 5 has me a little confused. I'm not sure what we can do about the railroad sign, but I'll find out.
So I have just a comment. Robin pointed it out. Just the trash in those permanent trash barrels. DPW said it's Casella. Well, I don't know whose responsibility is. All I do know is that I have seen it overflowing, and it's very unsightly, and it stays overflowing for some time. So I think in an effort to really beautify our downtown and make it attractive, and by the way, it looks great. I really noticed it today, Robin. You've done you and Jack and your crew have done such a wonderful job. But it's amazing. Details do make a difference. And so my question is, whose responsibility is it to get that trash emptied on a regular basis?
Casella's supposed to clean it as part of their contract.
Okay.
And we have had some struggles with them this year. There have been some changes, and like everybody, they've been struggling to keep in and retain and hire new employees. So there's been some turnover. We suspect that there was a point where there was a new driver who didn't know that it was part of his route, so he wasn't doing it.
Okay.
We got them back on. They picked it up, and I've talked with Tim about making sure that we're checking once a week to make sure
Okay.
that
Perfect,
they're
yeah.
being collected. So
Yeah.
we can't be down there every day necessarily to look at it, but we can make it a part of our regular weekly duty to make sure it's gotten picked up.
Do we have any?
Because when they don't, if we call them, they'll come back and get it, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have any kind of a scaffolding or structure for, I know we have the HDC, right, which is kind of the downtown improvement group, and then we have our Hamilton kind of business group down there as well that works with the HDC, and then ultimately they work with us in DPW. Is there any in that hierarchy, is there any kind of for instance, since Rosie brought up the trash can, it was kind of overflowing for a while. Is there someone there that could be a point person?
Like a liaison,
At Hamilton
right?
Merchant Group that could then call Rick, the president of HDC, and then we could escalate it up as we needed to?
There's no need to involve HCC. I mean,
You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, if
like any
there's
other,
other
like
issues,
any
not
other
just
trash
the-
that gets left behind, if somebody just calls and lets us know, we'll call Casella and they'll come
Right.
back that day and
I
get
mean,
it.
shop
I guess,
locals.
I guess I'm just
shop
saying,
locals should,
what's the
yeah.
right mechanism to say, if
Let's
Robin
keep an
walks
eye
by
on
and the
this,
trash can
yeah.
is full,
Right.
does she call Tim at the DPW, and then Tim handles that? It's just
Yeah.
kind of the start and end of it, right? It
Yep.
should be anyway.
It should be.
Okay.
And we're, anytime we get a call about any trash that went unpicked up, we make a call, and Casella's been responsive. If they missed
Right,
something,
and
they
then,
come back, so.
like the point with the split rail at the park, that would be another, you would call Tim, and then Tim
Yep.
would facilitate
Yep.
whoever the crew is or whatever to do it. So I guess maybe the kind of, the thing is here is that, oftentimes we're stretched thin with staffing at town hall. It's not that we don't care about our downtown or other things in town, it's just that we've got a lot going on.
Right.
And I think sometimes things get, not that they get missed, but we're on something else, and then
Right.
things kind of back up on us. So some kind of a call to Tim or something helps us kind of, oh, forgot about that, let's take care of that. So,
And a number of the things that, I mean, Robin had done 2 videos that have been viewed on YouTube. When the videos got circulated around to us, Tim saw them even before me, and he started reaching out, like there was some stuff that was left by the side of the shed next to the pool. Okay, check in with Sean, who does that belong to?
Right.
Why is it there? Can we get rid of it? Sean said, oh yeah, I had it, it was ours, we were keeping it, but we don't need it anymore, go ahead and get rid of it.
Right.
But, sometimes we need to be reminded, like any of us, you clean it up, you have something, so let me hold on to this, I don't have anywhere to put it up, I'll lean it over here for a couple days, and then it
Right,
slipped
and then
off his radar, he forgot about it.
Like all of us.
right.
I do it at home. But I mean, sometimes you just need to be reminded of, oh, yeah, I gotta get to that, and we're absolutely willing to get down there and get back to it, so. And the weeding, I think it's great that the volunteers came down and weeded out the beds. I think that's at least the 4th time this year that those tree beds on Railroad Avenue have been weeded, because we sent our crews down there 3 times earlier in the summer at different points, but the weeds just keep
And
growing.
we've
so.
had a rainy summer,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
everything's
yeah.
growing like
So
crazy,
it's just,
too.
I mean, it's great that they did it, and we're appreciative of the extra help. But certainly, anybody that sees these types of things can contact us. And
Now we just gotta get the post office to paint those ballers.
yeah, we can't do anything with the
Oh,
post
yeah.
office, unfortunately.
Right.
But
No,
Well,
but I see Tim is, sorry, not Tim, I see Ted is, Ted's there, turn his camera. Ted, do you wanna take a few minutes?
I would love to, thanks. It's been interesting to join the meeting for the last 2.5 hours. Thanks. Joe invited me. I was just following up on the Shared Winter Streets grant that we developed, wrote, submitted, and won the grant. And that grant started out, from my end, I got interested in it because I had some ideas around Patton Park and the pond there, and the idea of winning this Shared Winter Streets grant to help develop the area around the pond to help make it more of a COVID-friendly social gathering place for residents. That grant opportunity was around that theme. In the process of joining with the town, with Pat Shannon and Joe to put together a proposal, they brought in some other ideas to bundle into it around improvements for Railroad Ave and that area, some electrification, some bicycle markings and safety measures. So that was bundled together, submitted, and then during review, sort of cut down by the state. And we were left with a certain budget to accomplish a few things with a deadline of May of this year, and here we are, September. So I had sort of circled back to say, hey, whatever happened with that? We won some monies where they applied. I don't see any of those proposed items around Patton Park Pond implemented. So I don't know, where we are on it all. Joe invited me to join this meeting because he said there's some other initiatives afoot around a group of other interested citizens here to join efforts to help our with our town management and grounds. And so I've just heard Robin, you talk about your group. That's great. I applaud your efforts there. I'm also interested in overall town, management, admin, and beautification. I was only here to learn what happened with the Shared Winter Streets grant proceeds and our obligation to the state to deploy those funds.
So, I can answer that for you, Ted. So all of the improvements that were approved by the state, the electrification, the access of electricity at street level on Railroad Avenue has been done. In fact, was used during the festival yesterday. Several of the vendors were able to plug in to the electricity on the street that we brought in there. There were pedestrian and bike access improvements intended for Willow Street from Railroad to the park to connect the two. So all of the handicapped compliant ramps crossing all the streets down Willow were installed this spring in time for the grant. And I think the only thing we have to do is we have the markings, we have to paint the shared bike lane on Willow so that people recognize that bikes can use that as a way to get between Patton Park and the downtown. And I think we purchased with the money, but not yet installed the bike racks that were also part of that. So the big thing that Ted was advocating for, and I was sorry to see the state cut it out of our grant, was a couple of fire pits around the lake, which would have been great in the wintertime to have something going on while kids were, participating and playing in the snow. Maybe parents could sit in a fire pit, but unfortunately the state did not allow us to make those improvements. So we are trying to buy some additional benches for the additional seating at least, but we won't be able to add the fire pits. So I think that was everything, Ted. Off the top of my head.
Good to know about those. It's funny how the grant, skewed 100% over towards those add-on parts and left, it turns out, nothing for the efforts around the Patton Park Pond. There was an email, the last I had heard back in March, maybe about $15,000 of that grant could go towards those improvements around the pond. It sounds like nothing has gone there. So I'd still like to see it. I think that the pond is a fantastic resource during the winter for outdoor gathering. I know ice skating is there have been some liability concerns there. So, but I still think people use it very frequently for ice skating and for general gathering. That grass strip between the parking immediately adjacent to the pond is always very busy when the conditions are right, and people will gather there to access the pond. And there's nothing there. There's zero infrastructure to enable that. There's not even a bench. There's not. We had a lot of ideas. A fire pit would be lovely. Seating. There's not even seating there. There's seating over to the right towards the pool, and even an outdoor kind of grill barbecue unit made of stone. But none of that is used during the winter because that's the part of the pond right there that's the warmest, where the natural spring water circulates in, it seems. So that part of the pond is the last to freeze, and that's exactly where those amenities are. So nobody gathers over there during the winter. It's a shame. There was using some idea, there's power there, there's lighting up above. What about a webcam to just so people can see, is the pond skatable right now? Are there people on the pond? And that we had found there's even Wi-Fi accessibility available in range from the pool building that's already run by the town. So it's just a Wi-Fi camera with some power that could pick up the existing signal and suddenly have a webcam for the town to see what's going on the pond. So I still would love to see some of those improvements. It sounds like the budget around the shared winter streets dwindled and dwindled towards those and have gone to other applications. So I guess, Joe, just let me know what ultimately might be left for any of those improvements.
Yeah, let me circle back to you. Let me get Tim involved, and we'll circle back to you, because as you know, Pat Shannon left in May, but we'll circle back to you and get you back, get some of these things back up. Okay.
Okay, great. Well, I remain interested to help out and help agitate for some of these improvements. I'll keep doing that. If I may, I'll just end on one thing. Robin, your list of ideas for improvements, if I may add a suggestion to that, when I went and picked up my kids and was there at the park this weekend after the flag football and all the other sporting activities that happen there, almost constantly during sort of the fall season and the spring season, the park was filthy with garbage. People, it's amazing, our own residents of our own town who go there around these sports activities with their kids. By the end of the day, it's just a mess. It's unbelievable how much stuff is left over, carelessly left around, and it blows into the pond or the edges around the pond. It was pretty sad. I don't know if there's anything we can do around that, public awareness or some signs, or you could schedule a cleanup at the end of each weekend day during the fall or the spring busy seasons, but that's just cleaning up after people who are not cleaning up after themselves. So, but it is a shame in the evening to see how bad it gets.
Well, I love all your attention to detail. Ted, is it? Yeah.
Ted Ackworth.
Yeah, I think I have noticed. that park can get pretty messy pretty quickly, but I do also see our DPW crew on it as quickly as they can. Maybe we can think about maybe some metal trash cans or something. We could encourage people to take in and take out, but it really makes me happy that you are very cognizant of that and want to think about ways that we can improve the problem. And I think Robin and I had talked about benches around Weaver Pond as well. So that's something that's on the radar. It takes time to get these things done, and I think the more that people are interested and will come out and talk to us about it, the more you'll keep it right on the front burner. So thank you so much for your input.
Well, I'll get
so
re-inspired when the first snow flies and the ice starts to get into condition, and I'll want to get out there ice skating again. So
Don't wish for snow, please.
Excuse me, I was just going to say, I'm so old. I remember when they had picnic tables around around that pond, and they had benches, and they would serve hot cocoa out of that little garage. But yeah, I would love to see picnic tables and benches around. That would be great.
Darcy, I feel another community event coming on. Maybe we could do a fundraiser. Let's do a
I do
fundraiser.
see people out there in the winter after snow falls. The people who are really into the pond skating, they get out there. They bring their own shovels and brooms and they clear it off. And it seems like there's likely to be a nucleus of really interested people, particularly, specifically around the ice skating.
Hockey.
Maybe we just, we can just enough to enable them to kind of citizens patrol, keep work on the ice or this or that. I've even seen some cool YouTube videos about homemade Zambonis, on a budget, $100 in parts from Home Depot, and a 55-gallon drum of plastic, some PVC pipes, and a wagon, and a water supply, and you can kind of run it back and forth across the ice and Zamboni it. I think some very basic supplies down there during the winter time, could enable the already interested labor, to keep that ice in better condition. It doesn't take much, and it would probably be available, 10 times as many days per winter just by having, some shovels and brooms and basics down there. And they obviously get into then, where do you store it and who has access to it and who maintains it and what happens when bits of it disappear. Obviously those are a lot of the questions that we'd have, but maybe a little shed with a combo lock that can be shared amongst a few friends of Patton Park members who express interest in keeping an eye on the ice during the winter, it would work fine. We're not talking about a expensive, valuable assets, just some shovels and brooms and maybe a little wagon with a barrel on it. Yeah.
Love your ideas. We can make that happen.
I'm sorry?
We can make that happen.
Okay,
I
great.
love your ideas. I'm always for doing things on a shoestring, working with citizens. It sounds like a fun project. So why not? Let's do it. We'll figure it out.
Okay, terrific. Well, the season is good. Here we are in September. We got a few months building up to the first ice. So maybe we could use that as a catalyst.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Thank you, Ted.
My next
Thank you, Ted.
project.
You, Robin. So I guess we'll end this on a positive note in terms of community building, but I want to thank the shop local group for everything they did on Sunday to make it a success. So I was down. I think I saw everybody down there from this group, as well as many community members. So I'd be interested to hear some data, Joe, on what type of data they collected, how many people, and how the vendors did. But I thought it was a success. Everything went really well from the from our public safety officers to the vendors to everybody who volunteered. It was great. So I was going to say it was on our agenda to just talk about a wrap up, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I thought it was great.
It was great. I hope they do it more often, maybe like every other month or something, or every quarter.
A lot of work.
Could do it every weekend with a beer.
Every weekend.
You're always thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe have them come in and talk about where there's, do a spring soiree and a fall festival or something like that, so,
Dance party.
yeah,
Spring fling.
spring fling. So it was great, yeah. No, I agree. I think it should be at least twice a year, if not more. But I mean, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but I'm curious to see how people how people did. Was it a fundraiser? Was it profitable? Was it a fundraiser? Were there any, what are the lessons learned? So, but I think
Maybe
it should
the
be more
next
than
one
once
will
a
be
year.
bigger.
Well, they do it at Christmas time,
Yeah,
don't they?
they do
The
like a little
Christmas
stroll, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun, yeah.
They do.
That should be fun.
So that will be happening.
All right, Joe, anything else we got to talk about tonight?
Nothing else on the agenda.
So we are looking for
may
a high school liaison for the select board, and so I'm working with the school on that. So between Brian and Eric, and so we have some volunteers, and hopefully we'll get some applications to review those. So that's something we're working on, and then there's something else that I got an email from today, Joe. Let me go to my agenda real quick here. It was.
And while you're looking for that, Bill Darcy, is there anything we need to prepare for our retreat on Saturday?
I would just be rested and ready at 10:30. They're going to be there at 10 to set everything up and get all the technical stuff done. You'll want to bring a mask. We're going to be distanced, but it's in the American Legion, just to remind everybody. And I think that's about it. Joe, you're providing lunch. Someone's providing lunch around 12, you said?
We'll have lunch, yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we'll probably after lunch spend a half an hour just debriefing or,
I think Michelle.
whatever.
I think Michelle Lee might have a couple of games for us to play too,
Twister.
So I think just come rested and ready, and that's it.
All right.
All right. And Joe, I know there was an email that came from Hamilton Wyndham about the portrait of a graduate, and they're looking for the select board to sort of input to what we think that a graduate of Hamilton should look like. So they have a meeting, I think, on October 6th from 6 to 9 that they're looking for input from us. So I'll get more information distributed to the board on how we can help define the portrait of a graduate for Hamilton Wyndham.
Interesting.
Okay, that's all I had today.
So I have a couple of things maybe for our next meeting. I think, so I don't know where we are in the reopening of the school agreement. We've not heard anything about that last several weeks.
Yep, that's a good point, and I will follow.
Yep, and then the other thing is, I've been asked by the seniors, what is the status of staffing for the COE, discussions about maybe combining officially or unofficially with Wenham. Not heard much about that, and those are two important things I think we should have a formal discussion about with updates.
Informally, I can tell you that we offered the position of outreach coordinator and outreach and program coordinator to Tim Morris, I believe, who will be starting at the beginning of October. He has to give notice to one of his other jobs.
Okay, so and how many hours a week will he be here?
20.
And so that's 4 hours, 5 days a week? Well, he won't need to be here on Tuesdays because
Kristen's here,
Super
yeah.
Kristen will be here.
Yeah, he's coordinated. He'll be working for us part-time and working for Rowley's Council on Aging part-time, so he'll be working a schedule between the two. But
Okay, but he'll be 20 hours, so hopefully, even if we had him 4 days a week for
we'll be
6
adding
hours.
in some
Okay,
additional-
good, because I have been asked about that.
Yep.
And I haven't had any information. Okay, super, that's great news.
We just offered him the position last Thursday, so that's why you haven't heard about it yet.
Okay, super.
I actually haven't got back the signed offer letter, but he had told us that he was going to take it if it was offered to him, so I'm assuming he's.
When will he start?
I believe it's October 6th or something like that. He had to give notice to one of his other, he's working 2 jobs. He's going to leave one of them to come to us, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Darcy, I have a motion, Darcy?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All right, we'll start with Darcy Dale.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Sean Farrell.
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
William Olson, aye. So thank you all. Very good, productive and robust discussion.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye.